The action takes place in the city in one of the high-rise buildings. The main character hits the table with all his might and says that this is why the next board game should be The Lost World. He holds a card. The character opposite also shows his card and says that it is not, so Charlotte is much better. Both heroes look into each other's eyes and incinerate their opponent with their gaze. They are silent. Suddenly, the main hero turns to Luca and says that in this case, there is no other way out. He says that only through play can they find out who is right. 15 minutes later, the heroes find out who won. Luca turns to his opponent and tells him that he won. The protagonist is indignant that he lost. The opponent says that then the next game will be Charlotte. The young man replies with annoyance that he knows, but next time he will not lose. The action moves to the computer room. The protagonist wearily puts his head on the table and exhales. A girl enters the protagonist's office and brings a drink. She notices that the young man seems to have lost again. He asks her to be quiet. The heroine answers that when the president of Luca takes things seriously, he never loses. She hands the protagonist his coffee. He agrees that his opponent always wins in such important matters. The girl consoles him and asks him not to be upset. He is good at many other things. The hero understands that his percentage of wins is not that high. In general, he does not complain, but it is too little. The girl is horrified and asks if he really remembers all his games. The young man replies that this is not so. He just writes everything down in a notebook. In order to defeat Luca, he analyzes each of their games, and today's game is no exception. The girl notices that the handwriting is crooked. The protagonist says that she should at least show a little respect. After all, he is the vice president of this company. The heroine replies that he may try very hard, but he does not have to go that far. The young man says that naturally, he has to work very hard, but he does not have to go that far. The young man says that naturally, he has to work very hard, because he is not as brilliant as his opponent. The heroine agrees with him. However, she thinks that the main character is a genius for her. The young man asks why she shouldn't also try hard in the game. He says that only in the game will they be able to find out who is right. The heroine thinks that the young man has gone completely crazy from defeats. He denies this. The girl asks if the president of Luca really came up with this. Hera says no. It's a rule they established back in school. The assistant is surprised that the heroes were classmates. The young man replies that he met him through board games. They also founded the company together when they created the company. They created the company, they had to decide who would be its president. The protagonist says that Lucas said that they need to choose a president in the game, and so it continues now. The girl is surprised that it turns out that the main character also lost then. The young man asks her not to remind him of this. The assistant asks if Narus really wanted to become president that much. He replies that he is not interested in the position of president. The heroine asks why they are constantly fighting then. The protagonist replies that because he and Luca are rivals, he just wants to defeat his rival. The girl says that he talks like a manga character and is hard to understand. She recalls that she has long been interested in the question of why they play a game of skating at an important moment. The protagonist asks if she is talking about the company's choice of games. He replies that they play because this game is the embodiment of management. Its action takes place on a fictional continent. It is a board game in which two people play the hero of the Demon King. Using their figures, they collect resources to improve their hero skills and capture enemy territories. In battle, the winner is the one who can defeat the enemy hero first. The figure can be used in different ways. For example, to improve skills or collect resources. Everything can change after any move. Therefore, to win this game, you need to effectively use your resources and subordinates. Create a favorable situation for yourself, and spoil it for your opponent. That's why they settle their disputes by skating. The heroine replies that she understands. The young man remembers that this was the first game he played with Luca. He says that, since everything has been decided, it is worth working hard on the Charlotte. The girl smiles and asks if she should bring him more coffee. The protagonist agrees. The action takes place a year later. The young man again sees familiar figures. The young man realizes that Charlotte is not popular at all in 6 months. Since its release, they have sold only 50,000 copies for that time. The company's stock price has increased significantly. The heroes continue playing. and Luca says that it is the protagonist's turn now. He is sure that this game will gain popularity abroad, and they will receive an award for it. The young man realizes that this is not what he expected. He wonders if this is enough for the bow. The young man finds his opponent amazing. The company president looks at the main character in surprise. The young man shouts that he will not admit defeat. This time the victory will be his. Luca silently looks at the protagonist. He giggles. This says that this is his whole enemy. The protagonist turns around and notices something. The young man sees messages from Gonzai that everything is ready. He says that he needs to go to the toilet. The young man apologizes and offers to continue from the next turn. The enemy agrees. The main character's assistant asks other people if he has arrived yet. Should he have been here already? They've prepared a gift. The young man approaches the heroes. The girl thanks the protagonist for helping and asks where the president of Luca is. The protagonist replies with annoyance that he doesn't care about his own birthday. The heroes take the gifts in their hands and head to the president's office. The young man commands them to come in. All the employees rush into the office and congratulate the young man on his birthday. At this moment, the figures fall to the floor, and the main character looks at what is happening in horror. President Lu's chair is empty. On this day, the bow disappeared. They searched everywhere in the company but could not find him on TV. There were frequent mentions of missing persons, kidnapped or spirited away. Everlu disappeared in order to protect his company. The protagonist became the new president. 3 years have flown by. At one of the events, words of gratitude are heard for waiting. The host talks about the game that became the best game of the year. He is about to announce the new winner of the prize. This game is called Charlotte, from Narus. The main character holds the winning cup and becomes a star. Everyone takes pictures of him and asks him to pay attention to their cameras. The journalist turns to the protagonist and asks how he feels now. The young man replies that they had to overcome many difficulties on the way to this award, and like Togo. The girl asks if by difficulties he means the disappearance of the previous president several years ago. The protagonist looks at her in horror. He smiles and awkwardly replies that he didn't mean that. The girl asks if they knew from the start that the game would hit foreign markets. The hero replies that they did, because it is a big market after all. The game has become popular at an incredible rate. She asks if that was his goal. The boy replies that they didn't expect it to become so popular. For that, he thanks all his players. The girl thanks him for his hard work. He thanks her for always keeping them company. He didn't create this game. This game was created by Luca. No matter how many times he hears this, he can't come up with a normal answer. The assistant asks the protagonist if he drinks too much. He replies that it's okay. It's a holiday. The girl asks herself why he's so sad on a holiday. She leaves the room, says she'll bring him some water. The protagonist thanks her and looks at the reward. In the end, they were able to get this award. It's hard to believe that they did it. The young man says that this award is not for him. He places the cup on the former president's desk and addresses him as if he sees it before him. The hero says that Luca has earned it. He pours himself another drink and says that even with the company's enemies gone, all is well. That's because he's here. The protagonist straightens out, says that he now has too many responsibilities. He is angry at his comrade for not saying at least a word to him before disappearing. He has to do all his work. The protagonist takes a sip from the glass and says that after the onion disappeared, he no longer lost in games. He says that unlike the former president, the hero listens to all his instructions. The protagonist recalls how he quarreled with the former president and tries to calm himself down by saying that now the entire office belongs to him. He remembers his friend's smile since he disappeared from the corners of the hero. A comfortable life began. However, no matter how he tries to convince himself, the main character begs his friend to return as soon as possible. Suddenly, one of the figures falls to the floor. The main character looks at it and understands that this skating is no longer important to him. Victory or defeat. He remembers the events of several years ago. He looks at his friend's chair and thinks that he could have left him at least one clue without leaving the room. He disappeared so suddenly. Is it really possible? The hero looks closely at the board. He approaches it and realizes that it is all covered in dust. With the bow gone, nothing has changed. He moves the piece and says that it is his turn. Suddenly, a wonderful light starts to emanate from the board. The main character does not understand what it is. He asks himself, what's going on? The assistant, meanwhile, walks down the corridor. She enters the office and addresses the president. The girl says that she brought water. However, there is no one in the room. The protagonist looks in horror at the sight spread out before him. He finds himself in some valley in front of the mountains. The young man looks around and asks himself, where is he? He feels as if he is in a dream. He picks up a stone of earth and examines it. Everything around him looks too real for a dream. The young man does not understand what it is. He swings his arm and throws the stone aside. Suddenly something flies into his hand. The protagonist falls to his knees, says that it hurts a lot. He looks at his shoulder and realizes that a branch of an arrow is sticking out of it. He gets up and asks out loud what is happening here and who attacked him. Suddenly, he notices his opponents in horror. Several monsters laugh hoarsely and look straight at him. The young man realizes that they are goblins. They are talking to each other, telling each other that there is a man there who can be eaten. The goblins are going to catch him. The protagonist hears their words and is horrified to realize that they are going to eat him. The protagonist realizes that he needs to run away. The goblins are chasing him. He runs as fast as he can, knowing that if he stops, he will die. He will be killed. The protagonist asks himself, is this some kind of goblin joke? After all, it doesn't happen. Several arrows will fly after him. They dig into his back and inflict wounds. The protagonist looks back and asks himself, is he really going to die here? He remembers how they spent time with a friend. The main character gathers all his strength and says that he is not going to die in such a place. He has not yet defeated his opponent in the game. He must meet the bow. The goblins chase him and realize that the prey was fast. The main character screams that he cannot die. Suddenly, he runs out onto the cliff, but does not have time to stop. The Skoblins watch their victim closely. The protagonist falls into the river and is carried away by the current. The monsters are disappointed and look after him, realizing that the food has escaped. Young man. You pour out from under the water and cough. His body does not move. Everything floats, but he survived. He must return to the company and protect it until Luca returns. If the company disappears, he must find a way back. The protagonist convinces himself that he will definitely survive. He asks Luca to wait for him. The young man tries to crawl, but he doesn't have the strength to do so. He falls. A figure of a man appears above him, asking again. The protagonist's journey from the president's office to another world has begun, and now his task is to survive. The action moves to a cave. Inside it is somewhat reminiscent of a prison with cells. In one of the dungeons, the main character is lying on the floor. He comes to and finds an insect crawling across his face. The young man jumps back and shakes the caterpillar off his cheek. He looks around and asks himself, where is he? Has he really ended up in prison? The protagonist remembers that he was wounded by goblins. He looks closely at his hands, but does not find any arrow wounds there. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to an iron ring that binds his neck. He asks, what is it? Is it really a collar? The protagonist tries to get out of it, but he fails. He falls exhausted on all fours. He tries to understand what this situation is, how he got the collar, and how he got to prison in the first place. The protagonist assumes that he was kidnapped. He thinks about it and decides that they must have decided to eat him later. He sticks his head out from behind the bars and screams loudly, hoping that someone will help him. However, the corridors are completely silent. The young man realizes that there is no one around. He asks himself, why then are there so many cages? There is no security here if he runs. Now is the best time. The young man grabs the bars and starts to pull them in different directions with all his might. He screams that he will break out of here now, and that he will definitely break them. He needs to get back to his company at all costs. He hits his head on something hard. The main character looks up and sees a board in front of him, which says that he's being deducted a point from his victory. The young man looks ahead in bewilderment and asks, what does this mean? Doesn't understand what it is and where this board came from. The main character looks around and asks you, is this really a map? He looks closely at the inscription and discovers that the main character's victory points are written there. He tells himself that he has returned and asks, what was that just now? In the corridor, he hears someone's footsteps. The young man presses himself against the wall and asks himself, is someone really coming towards him? An unknown person approaches the grate and illuminates it with a burning lantern. Because of the way the light falls, the protagonist cannot see his face. The young man tries to make out the stranger's features. He wonders if this is a guard or one of the goblins. He asks himself, is it really true that they decided to leave him for later? The protagonist assures himself that this cannot be, and that it is all untrue. Suddenly, an unknown person lights up his face, and this person turns out to be a girl. She turns to the main character, asking him to forgive her. She says that the young man ended up here because of her fault. That is why he ended up in prison. The main character looks his new acquaintance in surprise. She says that she is incredibly sorry and begs for forgiveness. The protagonist asks the girl to wait and begs her to explain to him what is happening. He asks the heroine who she is, what happened to him after he lost consciousness. The girl is surprised and asks for forgiveness again. She says that her name is Kanon. She found him wounded on the riverbank. The heroine healed him with the help of magic. The protagonist is amazed. He asks, what kind of magic are we talking about? Healing magic is a very rare phenomenon. The girl healed his wounds, but he lost too much blood. One says that she tried to move him to another place. Her subordinates asked her if this was really a human being. The heroine pulls one of the monsters back. He says that people are tasty. He asks, is the leader really going to eat this person? The master says that he also wants to taste him. The girl replies that no, he can't do that, because this man is a servant. The heroine says that she is going to make him a servant. The monster is surprised and asks, really, can't he be eaten? The girl clearly replies that she can't. She promises to register the protagonist as a servant and demands that everyone return to work. She is happy that she has time. The monster asks the girl where she is going. He says that there is nothing in the direction she is going, and asks if she is lost. The brute says he will take her, and asks her not to worry. At this point, the heroine finishes her story. The protagonist is surprised and asks himself, are people really a delicacy for all these monsters? He turns to his new acquaintance, says that in other words, she tried to help him, but met another monster. Apparently, she had no choice in the world, except to put this strange collar on him. The girl apologizes. The protagonist also apologizes and says that his head is in a mess right now and he needs to think it over. First of all, she said that she healed his wound with magic. There are monsters like goblins everywhere, and magic is not uncommon here. If so, then this is definitely not Earth. Only one thought comes to the protagonist's head. He grabs his clothes. He thinks that if this is another world, then he somehow needs to return to his home. He turns to his new acquaintance and asks her how he can return to his world. You suddenly hear a terrible sound behind the heroes. The main character turns around at the growl and asks what it is. The girl says you are the signal for the morning meeting. The young man asks again. The heroine tells him to follow her right behind. The protagonist asks where they are going. The girl replies that they are heading to her workplace. She apologizes again, saying that now that he has become a servant, he must work for the benefit of the army, the Lord of Demons. The protagonist, horrified, asks again what army of the demon lord she is talking about. He asks himself, are there other monsters here? He understands that he cannot stay here for long. He needs to escape from here. The heroine says that she has one request. Whatever happens to the main character, he must not die. The young man asks again. The action takes place outside. The weather is fine, and the young man asks himself where he made a mistake. He tells himself that he never thought that the day would come when he would sit on his knees in front of a girl. A monster approaches them and asks the heroine if this is her servant. He wonders if he can be eaten because the main character looks delicious. The girl asks if he really likes them that much. She reminds him that she said yesterday that this servant would work with them in the supply department. This is the reason why he cannot be eaten. The protagonist looks around. There are only monsters around him. That this was another world was already clear during the conversations about magic. He is usually a servant who will be of no use to the leader. The monsters say that they heard that he is a worker who was found alone. They ask who he will help. Each of the heroes demands that the young man be given to them. They are going to exploit the main character until he dies. The three monsters glare at each other. Each one demands that the others be quiet and says that the young man will belong to him. Their leader demands that they calm down. You can continue to argue, saying that one of them, although he boasts of his achievements, does not contribute anything. The other one also does not bring any benefit, and not only interferes. The main character thinks that these are very strange guys. although they are monsters. But they behave just like people. He tries to escape from reality. Suddenly, the main character looks up. Another monster looks down at him and says that he always wanted to have a servant. He takes the main character, lifts him into the air with one hand. The girl shouts at her subordinate not to do this. She says that if the young man is with him, he will definitely die. He replies that the contribution to the demon army is very important and does not understand what is wrong with it. The girl hesitates and does not know how to resist the huge monster. The little monsters don't understand why the big one took him. They assume the big guy will work better if he has a slave. His last servant died 3 days later. The monster girl leaves and says that she will not return. The heroes have nothing more to talk about. They say goodbye. The girl asks everyone for forgiveness. A huge monster drags the main character away and leaves him near a tree. The young man asks if they are really in the forest. He replies that their job here is to hunt. But since he is a slow monster, and the boar is fast, they need to constantly catch up with him. Therefore, the main character must lead the boar. He, in turn, will kill him. The monster says that this is a good plan and calls himself smart. The young man is indignant and asks how he should lead the boar. He just wants to return to his world. The monster says that everything is clear to him, and in this case he will act differently. There will be nothing left to do but eat the main character right here and now. He is about to swallow the young man, but he screams. Because he wants him not to come near him. He takes a course of sand in his hand. The young man throws sand at his opponent and says that he has no time to hunt boars and the monster must do it himself. He screams in pain. The protagonist understands that he needs to run because the monster said that he is very slow. The protagonist tells himself that he must find a way home. The monster shouts after him for the protagonist not to run away. He keeps running, doesn't stop. The main character understands that the monster is about to hit him from behind. A huge log falls to the ground almost right next to the young man's head. The monster says that it will be so. To the main character, you can't run. But he asks why the young man is lying down. The main character says that his collar tightened, and the monster didn't even realize that he almost killed him. What do you answer? That the main character should bring him a boar. He asks if the young man will do it. The protagonist decides that he will listen to him for now. He can't escape while he has this collar on. He needs to wait for the right moment. The monster says that's good. He swings his arm, about to throw the protagonist forward. He screams at him not to do it, but the monster is already throwing him. The main character flies far to the side. He tries to get up and says that the monster abandoned him. If the ground was solid, he would definitely die. The protagonist feels a warm breeze. He looks up and asks if everyone around him is joking. In front of him is the muzzle of a huge creature. The protagonist asks himself, "Where is this boar?" The young man starts running away from the new monster as fast as he can. Dalma looks at the approaching youth and the boar and rejoices at the prey. He swings the log with all his might. The protagonist is terrified, screams, and asks him to wait. However, the monster is already flying into the enemy. The main character's shockwave is thrown back by a tree trunk. His landing does not look soft at all. Meanwhile, the monster looks at the animal's carcass and is happy that one boar is already ready. Dolma says that 4 more are needed, so it is too early to relax. The protagonist asks if he is joking. He cannot bear 4 more. Continuing at this pace, even 100 lives will not be enough for him. After some time, night falls. A young man is having dinner and notices that the bread he was given was moldy. He lies and remembers that just yesterday he was in his office. He still doesn't understand what's going on here. There is no more doubt. This is another world, and now he needs to do something about it. It is only a matter of time before he dies here. There is no escape with this swindler. The protagonist remembers his friend and asks, will he never be able to return back? Will he really die here? A scoreboard appears in front of him, on which points are awarded. The main character carefully examines the calculations and says that this strange thing has appeared again. He asks you what victory points are. He remembers a map he saw while playing with the bow. It looks a lot like a scoreboard. The main character realizes in horror that he has fallen into a trap. The action moves to the mountains again. There is a meeting of all the monsters. The girl gives a speech to them. The protagonist understands that he really ended up in skating. The young man looked again. He gets with the girl. He understands that there is no doubt about it, and the victory points are gradually added up. Such a form of the playing field can only be in skating. The main character watches what is happening and understands that he is in the world of the board game of skating. The young man still cannot believe it and thinks it is impossible. In the Catania, there is an army of the Lord, demons, and a hero. If this is the world of the Catania, then he begins to understand what army the girl is talking about. The young man tells himself that this cannot be. He decides that he should not think that this world of the board game is simply ridiculous and impossible. In any case, he must take control of the situation, and in this case, he will definitely be able to return to his world. The girl begins the morning meeting. She is not sure. She says that they should start with their contribution rate. This time, they couldn't reach the norm. The monsters are indignant and say that you are not surprising. This norm is too high. Even with the help of the new servant, Dolia was able to catch only one boar. They ask why he caught so little game. If they use a servant, he must try harder. The monster asks everyone for forgiveness, saying that the servant simply lost consciousness and could not help him. Everyone calls him names, telling him to remember that the norm is important. They are in the servant's condition. If he lost consciousness, they need to wake him up. They have no time to rest. He says that today he is using the main character to the fullest. The main character asks in horror how this is supposed to be a joke. The girl asks everyone to calm down and turns to the monster. She asks him not to make him feel bad. The monsters ask what she is talking about. Are they really bad? The girl justifies herself. Answers that, of course not. The monsters address her as a kind commander. They say she only got her position because she was born into a good family and cannot perform her duties properly. The monster girl says that she would also like to be born into a good family. She could have fun and relax all day long. The hero is asked if the norm has changed for this week. The girl remembers and says that it is. Is that right? One of the monsters says that in that case he went to work. His comrade supports this proposal. Everyone decides that they need to go to work. The monster turns to the main character, says that he was scolded. He asks him why everyone was angry only at him. The protagonist thinks that he doesn't care at all now. He asks himself what his new master will do to him now. If everything is even worse than yesterday, then he can definitely die. The protagonist decides that he needs to figure out what to do in such a situation. If this is really a bad substance, the young man tries to understand what the conditions are for victory here. He needs to do a lot. The monster asks why no one praises him. The protagonist turns to him and says that he wants to tell him how well his master is doing. The monster raises his hand, in which he is squeezing the young man and does not understand what he is talking about. The main character says that this is all unfair. None of the heroes can fulfill the norm, but for some reason everyone is angry only at his master. Dolma says that this is stupid. The protagonist agrees and continues to talk about how they have no right to be angry with him. He asks if they themselves were able to achieve the norm. It is wrong to blame only his master for everything. The monster agrees with him and lets the protagonist go. The young man continues his speech and asks why he can't surpass them all. He asks what he means. The protagonist says that everyone is angry because she can handle the norm. In this case, he must achieve more than them and fulfill the norm. He asks if the monster does not want to fulfill it. He answers that, of course he does. The protagonist turns to him and asks him to trust just once. He asks his master for just 3 days to treat him not as a servant, but as a comrade. The monster asks him again what he is talking about. The protagonist replies that everything is correct, and he should treat him as an equal comrade, not a tool. He shows his master how exhausted his body is. Even if they continue to work like yesterday, they will never meet the quota. More precisely, he is not sure that he can survive another day like this. The protagonist says, "Are you serious?" He says that since he got here, he has not been able to eat properly. Also, his cell is too small. The protagonist asks permission to work for a few days without throwing it around, without trying to die. He promises that the monster will then be able to fulfill the quota in that time. The protagonist says that if he fails, he can do whatever he wants with him. The monster agrees to believe the protagonist, but sets one condition. He says that if the young man fails, he will eat him. The young man agrees to this condition and says what suits him. During these few days, he does the work for him. It is very important skating. It is a game in which to defeat the hero or the Lord of Demons, you need to gather strong allies. I would not like to believe that this world skating on deny this too. If he has a chance to do something, he will not miss it. The protagonist decides that he will make the monster his ally. Since he is wearing a collar, he will not be able to escape from the Demon Lord's army. Does this play into his hands? The young man decides that in this case, he himself will become the Demon Lord and end this game. The action takes place in the forest. The protagonist says that first they need to talk a little. The monster asks if he will go hunting. The young man replies that such an approach is ineffective. It is better to share information now, to develop a strategy. He says that first they need to imagine how they will hunt. Monster asks, why? The protagonist asks if they are really on the same team now. He wonders if the monster thinks they can work well without even knowing each other's names. He is surprised. The heroes decide to start by getting to know each other. The young man gives his full name. The monster says his name is Doma. The protagonist smiles and says that this is great. He asks what skills his interlocutor has and what is he good at. The protagonist says that, for example, he plays board games very well. He likes to develop strategies and deceive opponents. The monster asks what games are. He says that he is confident in his willpower and that no one has ever praised him for it before. The protagonist realizes that with this approach he is behaving like a child. The monster says that he is still confident in his magical throwing. The protagonist asks again what it is. The monster replies that they use magic as a projectile. It's simple. The protagonist remembers that the girl in the hood also said something similar about magic healing. After all, she is also a monster. The protagonist asks what can be done with this method of throwing magic. After all, this magic can be used to quickly hunt boars. The monster says that she allows him to throw his magic power wherever he wants. The protagonist asks again, is that all? It's not quite what he imagined, because he thought it would be something like a fireball. Suddenly he realizes that the monster can use this magic to kill boars. What do you say that it won't work? A moving target is hard to hit. These are the downsides of using it. The protagonist says that they will talk about the norm later. The young man asks how many boars is the norm. He asks if this is a personal norm or the norm of the whole team. The monster says that the team must prepare a certain number of boars per week. At the morning meeting, everyone said that they could not fulfill the norm. The protagonist says that even a monster is hard to deal with that boar. He turns to his new friend and asks if they have complimented each other before. He replies that no. The young man is surprised. Have they never had such an experience? The monster replies that they haven't tried that. The protagonist, he is surprised that everyone was simply forced to do an impossible task. It's very mean and offensive. The monster says that he tries to work harder than anyone else. Every day he thinks about hunting, but it does not bear any fruit, since he is not very smart. Nothing works out and everything constantly falls out of his hands. The team members constantly quarrel. This is very offensive to him. The protagonist understands that his comrade tries to catch a boar every time and comes up with a new plan. Every time he tries to fulfill his norm. The young man smiles when asked again, is it really offensive? It's good, he says. If the monster is offended, it only proves that he works tirelessly. It is because of this feeling of resentment that he decided to listen to the main character, because no one even wants to listen to his words. However, the monster is worried about the norm and listened to him because he was offended. Not everyone is capable of this. There is no need to be so sad. The hero says that regret. They tell him that the monster can become the best, so he advises him not to be so sad. The comrade asks again what he said. The protagonist curses and says that they need to talk about work next. He asks if the monster knows where boars appear most often. He decides to take him to the very fruit, to one place. The main character follows him silently for a long time, and then asks, how long will I stay with him? A boar appears on the comrade's way. He does not notice the heroes. However, feeling the presence of strangers, he runs away into the bushes. The monster says that this is always the case. Only he will find the boar. He immediately runs away. The main character asks you if he was really scared, but he immediately chased after him. The monster asks, don't the boars look tasty? The protagonist asks not to look at him with such a face. He suggests going to where the boar was for now. The heroes go straight to the lake. The main characters pay attention to the pond and say that wild boars come here very often. There is quite a lot of food here, and some fruits look very much like apples. He asks his new friend how well he knows this place. He answers that he learned about it when he was hunting alone, but the boar immediately ran away. If you wait for the boars here, it will not be difficult to fulfill the quota. The monster says he tried to do this before, but the boars never came. They rarely manage to catch a boar, and the best result for their entire team is 3. The main character asks himself how this can be. He has to fulfill the norm. He definitely won't like being eaten. He turns to his new comrade and says that they need to start studying boars. He runs away and says that there are clear traces of a wild boar. The trees are stripped on all sides. The ground is mint. It is clear as day to the main character that it is a boar. This road is often used. In addition, this road has clearly been trampled for a long time, and boars go to the pond. The protagonist runs off into the tracks and turns to his comrade. He asks if there are other large animals here. Someone replies that he has only seen wild boars here. The young man says that he understands. There are many tracks and, apparently, about 5 wild boars have passed. The monster says that there are few wild boars have passed. The monster says that there are few wild boars. He says he figured out how to catch them. They are very big, and usually a trap won't stop them. In that case, you need to create one that can contain them. The main character says that he will need some tools. They look into the warehouse, and the protagonist finds that it is dusty. All monsters use magic, so they do not need tools. For humans, minds are tools, their main weapon. The young man notices a fine rope and says that they will need it. He asks if there are knives here. The monster shows where they can be found. The protagonist says that this is all great and all that remains is to find something strong enough to withstand the boar's attack. He asks himself, what to do now? Without them, he will not be able to make a trap. If he cannot fulfill the quota, he will die. He will simply be eaten. Or at best, he will be a servant for the rest of his life. The young man asks himself, will he really not end it all here? He wanted to become a demon lord and return to his world with the meadow. He is not going to do this. There is a reason, without which it is impossible to end his life. The main character calls out to his new friend and says that he won't need that much time. He says they will be able to meet the quota today. Last time he was too carried away because it was his first time. And it was too long. The action takes place at night. The girl assumes that the man is probably suffering greatly. This is not surprising because he is working with a monster and in such an environment. She should help him, at least with treating his wounds. Suddenly, the girl notices that the bars have disappeared. She looks and does not find them, realizing that they are not missing. The main character tracks down wild boars, hiding behind trees. Although his friend said that wild boars come rarely, but they are not visible. The fact that there is an animal trail here suggests that they often visit this pond. Perhaps they will return, or if the monsters are not around, it should happen at night. As expected, there is a rustling sound. Wild boars slowly make their way through the night forest. The main character looks closely and wonders if there are too many of them, but she ran, if they all did. And now they will fall under his hand. Then he will become afraid. If the plan doesn't work, then his life is over. He dedicated his whole life to his work and never put his life on the line. Now he can't retreat. He must do everything in his power. The main character is going to do this for the sake of his friend Luke. The hero remembers the words of his comrade that as soon as he finds a boar, he immediately runs away. But he chased after the main character. The phrase about how the boars look delicious is spinning in his head. The young man remembers that pigs eat human flesh. There is no doubt he has already seen such eyes. As soon as he got into this world of eyes, a complete desire to eat him. The protagonist turns to the boars and says that instead of eating these little fruits, they can have them for lunch. If they are so hungry, they can try it. The boars rush after the main character, thundering, their hooves on the ground. He has no other way but to run along this path. The protagonist realizes that thanks to the previous incident, he was able to learn about the speed of the boars. He needs to keep up the pace, or the boars might fall behind. However, he miscalculates somewhere and realizes that he has almost been caught. The main character understands that it is much easier to run along this animal trail. And at this rate, he will simply be caught. The young man continues to move his arms and legs with all his might in order to save himself. The main character realizes that he is very tired. His heart is beating so hard that he cannot breathe normally. The protagonist feels the earth tremble and clearly hears his own breathing. It is useless. The young man is already imagining how he will be eaten. The main character is terrified and screams in fear. In a panic, he says that this should not happen. He does not want to die. The young man asks, is he really going to die? Friends and acquaintances flash before his eyes. His whole life flies by in an instant. He grits his teeth even harder. The main character screams at the top of his lungs that he wants to live and return to their company. At that moment, the boar practically swallowed him. Suddenly, blades fly at the boar from all sides. They cut through branches and cut into his skin. The cut ropes create a special pattern. The team starts to slow down, but it's too late. A huge cage falls on him from above. The young man jumps back and tries to catch his breath. He looks at his opponent from behind the bars, his heart pounding harder than ever. The ropes are given to the back and tries to regain calm breathing. The protagonist smiles happily and looks at his comrade. He tells him his words of gratitude and still can't believe that the young man was able to catch them. The main character says that Doma chose the perfect time for the knives. They were able to catch as many as 14 kolbens as he promised. The main character happily reports that the quota has been met. The monster says that he is very happy and pleased that he believed the main character. They touch each other with their fists as a sign of friendship and mutual assistance. This chapter was a real touching scene, so it was not management-oriented. The last conversation with Dalma is a random but very important point. It is so important to praise people for their work. This is the most important part of training newbies. When they are new, they do not realize that they cannot do anything, and the boss should understand this. Praise them for what they have done. The monster looks at the captured boars in surprise and says that the hero is joking. They can't believe that they were all caught by a huge Doma monster. The leader of the demons looks at the loot in amazement and takes out where the steel bars disappeared. Everyone turns to the house and says that it is very cool. The monster laughs, says that he was praised. Another monster asks him to wait and asks if this was the servant's plan. Everyone turns to the main character. The hero asks, what does this mean? The monster says that he doesn't think that the Doma would have thought of setting such a trap. Most likely, the servant simply helped him with everything. The monsters ask their comrade, is this true? One of the monsters curses and says that despite being part of the demon lord's army, he listened to the human's words. He answers that everything is correct. The main character helped him. He couldn't have done it alone. Everyone asks in surprise, did he really work with a person? The monster is surprised and asks what's wrong with that. Trusting the main character, he was able to fulfill the norm because everyone demanded it from him. The army norm, the demon lord is very important. Or is he wrong? The monsters scold him. The protagonist decides to intervene and says that they just had an overly funny dialogue, so he couldn't help but laugh. They ask him what's funny and threaten him. The protagonist asks to wait and says that he wants to cooperate with the monsters. He says he will tell them everything he has learned about the wild boar and teach them how to catch it, and where they live, what they eat. You will tell them everything you know. The monster is surprised at the girl and asks if he really wants to help them. Two Monster says that you can't listen to this man. He turns to the protagonist, asking what his real goal is. Does he really want to say that he no longer wants to escape from here? The protagonist replies that he no longer wants to escape from here. The protagonist replies that he is not going to run away to become a demon lord. He definitely needs to get rid of the service status. The young man says that he is no longer a servant. He will become a member of the army of the demon lord, just like them. The young man asks if they agree to this condition. The monsters think. He asks not to treat him as a servant and wants the same conditions as they have. He can already fulfill the required norm and even more. For this, he will need to take strength for work. Make him an official member of the army. He wants to ensure his safety. The monsters realize that they can't keep him in a prison that has no bars. The monster girl says that she doesn't care, as long as she has less work. The leader of the demon army says that she agrees to accept him. The stubborn monster continues to swear and asks, "Are they all really that stupid?" He asks how one can trust what a person, a creature who easily makes promises and then gives, says. He says that humans and monsters can never get along. He doesn't know what the protagonist is up to, but he will never admit it. The young man's comrades tell him not to worry, because he always behaves like that. After all, it's an army of demons. Naturally, people are not warmly received here. The monster girl asks him to stop, think, and tell them about the boars. The protagonist asks if you accept the conditions, and if they have any reasons to refuse. The girl asks him to stop sitting in such a strange pose. The young man says that this is a traditional pose. Yeah. The slug says that this is very cool. He didn't know that there was such a pond nearby. The monsters say that everything is clear to them, and that's why they haven't seen boars during the day, because they usually lead a nocturnal lifestyle. The hero is a little upset that they will have to hunt at night, because you are too difficult. One of them says that finally they won't have to listen to that pig's mockery, and finally she will shut up. The protagonist asks, who are they talking about? The monsters answer that they are the bosses. Every time they don't fulfill the norm, she comes, scolds them, that they are absolutely useless. If they can't do the job, it's better to die. As soon as they remember this, they are immediately thrown into anger. The next time they meet, they decide to give him a good whack. It seems that in other worlds, there is abuse of power. The monster stubbornly destroys everything in its path and screams that it hates this person. He shouts that it is unacceptable for monsters to cooperate with people because they should be afraid of them and ask themselves, what should he do about it now? The monster screams that everyone is acting stupidly and was so easily deceived by this man. He falls silent and then says that he will never trust people who likes him like that and asks what happened. And does the monster really have any problems here? Turns around and sees his boss. At first glance, it may seem that people are simply losing profit, but in fact, it is enough to give a result. Most people are greedy. When results are achieved, they tend to think that it is all their merit. This is one option, but no one will want to work with such people on the same team next time. The new comrades decide to drink to the long-awaited fulfillment of the quota. Some raise their glasses to the bottom. The monster girl says that this is a blessing. She advises her comrades not to get drunk so quickly. With the fulfillment of the norm, they also received a raise. So the heroes can eat until they are full. The main character gobbles up the delicious food without even letting his new friend finish speaking. Everyone notices that he has a very good appetite. The girl introduces herself, calling herself by name, and says that they will now be acquainted. Lime also introduces himself. The third monster says that his name is Kamal, and next to him is Natsume. The girl notices the chapter. The very first acquaintance of the main character says that this is not her name. Her name is Canon, and nice to meet you again. The main character is also a name. He thanks everyone for their help. The monster girl asks if they found him by the river, why he was wandering alone through the territory of the demon lord's army. Kamal says that he heard that he didn't even have a weapon. He wandered far from people. The main character doesn't know what to answer him. He can't just say that he was transferred to the world of a board game. He says he can't remember. The boss says it must be from the shock wound. He could have lost his memory. Everyone thinks that the main character can be trusted because they were able to fulfill the quota. Everyone is happy that they found him first. If it were other groups, he would probably have been killed and eaten already. Slezala tells him that this is true. Most monsters don't like people. If he had found him, he would have probably killed him. The protagonist thinks that skating is a world where people and monsters fight. So, the reaction of that doll is normal for the army of the Demon Lord. If so, then he has many questions. He asks himself, why did this girl help him? A young man wants to ask a question about what people did, but suddenly a knife flies into his eye. He freezes a few millimeters away from the pupil. The monster girl squeezes him tightly in her hand and says that the main character shouldn't joke like that. The protagonist asks her for forgiveness, but says that he really doesn't know. Kamal turns to the girl and asks her to calm down. The heroine sits down. She says that their demon lord was killed by humans. Kamal says that these monsters have different lifestyles and birthplaces. For a long time, people hunted them, and then the demon lord appeared. The demon lord united many demons into the so-called demon lord army and marched against the humans. Thanks to this, the monsters' casualties were reduced, and they were able to return to their lands. However, the humans had a hero, and the great war between humans and demons began. In this war, the hero killed the demon lord with his own hands. Immediately after defeating the demon lord, the hero simply disappeared. The protagonist does not understand how this happened. People were confused after the hero disappeared and the war reached a dead end. The young man understands what happened here. Heroes and the demon lord in the game board map. This world is definitely a ride. Defeating the demon lord means the game has already ended once. With the defeat of the demon lord, the hero disappeared. This may mean that winning the game is a condition for returning to the home world. In that case, no matter what you do, he must become a demon lord and end this game. The threshold is crossed by the head. He greets everyone present and says that this is a very fortunate coincidence. A huge forest looks at the main character and his new comrades. He says that they apparently eat together with the servant. He turns to the boys and asks if they and the service are in the same position. The monster girl understands that it is the boss. The protagonist looks at him carefully. He says that he heard from his subordinate that they were able to fulfill the norm. These are servants. They have clearly started working better. The girl thanks him. The boss says that in that case, he increases their quota. Now the quota will be 20 boars. Everyone looks at their boss in horror and asks how this is possible. The boss says that with this man they have already caught many boars, so he thinks that with such a number there should be no problem either. The leader says that the norm for other teams is completely different. Even with a servant, such a number of boars is an impossible task. The boss says whether they can or not is not his concern. He doesn't care, and this is an order from a superior. The girl tries to counter him with something, but she has no arguments. The boss says that if they can meet the quotas as a bonus, he will pay them. Several thousand gold. That's enough for many such parties and money. I'll even have some left. However, if they fail, they will work for free. He will wait impatiently for their results for a month. The boss leaves and laughs. The girl asks the chief what they should do now. There is no way they can catch so many boars. The monsters ask why she couldn't be more persistent. The girl asks them for forgiveness. The monster says that she hoped for the main character's trap, that with it she would be able to relax. But here it happened. A very unpleasant situation. The heroine says that she has lost her appetite and returns home. Everyone leaves. The team leader yells for everyone to wait. She says it's too early to give up. The monster girl asks if she has a plan to meet this quota. The heroine doesn't know what to say. The monster girl looks over her shoulder and asks the heroine to act like a leader of this group for once. The girl is sad and does not understand what to do. The young man comes up to her, takes her hand and asks her not to worry. He asks her to trust him. The action moves to the food court department. The employees of this department are amazed that the group has done the unthinkable. They cannot believe that one team caught them all. One of the men thanks the chief for his hard work and admires the amount of game caught. He orders those boars to be taken to the usual place. The chief asks to tell the boss that these are from him. The workers try to move the carcasses. The monster turns to the boss, asking if it is reasonable to increase the quota to such a large number of boars. The man replies that, of course, he did it so that they would not receive any privileges. The monster is surprised. He replies that even if they cannot fulfill the quota, he will not fine them in any way. He asks not to worry. He can be trusted. He says that this is the army of the demon lord, and in such a place love for people is not allowed. Besides, he needs to beat all this nonsense out of them. The three heroes continue to sit in the diner. First of all, the main character suggests sorting out the information at hand. The girl asks what's wrong with his tone of voice. The protagonist says that he's officially become their comrade. This girl is now officially his leader too. So they need to somehow catch the boars with the protagonist's traps. There shouldn't be any problems. They still have time until the next check, but his trap won't hold 20 of them. The girl says that it is true. This time they caught less. There must be very few boars left on the territory of this team. The protagonist asks again about the team number. He remembers that the girl already said this. Now the department is full of teams that hunt every day. The main character, other teams ask, also hunts wild boars. The girl says that specific groups are responsible for hunting wild boars. Others are engaged in bird hunting and fishing. The boy asks if they can then use the surplus from other teams. The girl says that this is impossible. Each team has its own norm. She doesn't think they will be so generous to the other team with the Demon Lord army. Something is definitely wrong. In this case, the protagonist asks her to tell about the team's territories. The girl shows him the pages in the book and says that this is how the territories of teams 11 through 15 are located. The diagram shows the territories. The protagonist is amazed at how small their territory is compared to other teams. He asks her why their territory is so much smaller than the others. Is this their boss's trick again? The girl says that this is not true, because the team has its own claims on every territory in this forest. Each team is desperate to meet the quota, so they expand their territories and take land from their neighbors. The girl apologizes, says that if she were more confident in herself, but she is completely useless. The protagonist remains silent, and then says that there is no need to blame yourself so much. He says that the situation is not so bad, and there is always some way out. The heroine asks what he means. He says he wants to learn more about magic, but magic itself depends on monsters. The protagonist asks if this is true. The girl replies that it is. She says that Kamola has mimicry of Natsume, which is the enhancement of kittle plants, and has the magic of threads. Lime has the ability to split, and Asagiri has the ability to strengthen the body. The protagonist asks about strengthening. The girl says that she can increase her strength proportionally to the time that has passed. But since she gets very tired, she never sees it after that. The protagonist says that everything is clear to him now. The big monster says that he is throwing magic, and the leader herself has healing magic. And the protagonist thinks that this is very good. He encourages everyone and promises that they will definitely cope. The girl asks in surprise what he's talking about. The protagonist turns to the head and says that he has one request for her. The heroine is surprised and asks what he needs. The young man asks if she could entrust this work only to him. He promises that if everything works out, then good news can be expected very soon. Cannon asks the leader if there is a road here. He confirms it. Then the girl clarifies whether the guy is sure that everything will work out for them. She says that there are very few boars left on their territory. She understands that they must negotiate with other teams, but the chances of success are slim. Naris asks if it's because he's human. Cannon confirms this and says that Team 13, which they're heading to now, isn't doing so well, so it's unlikely that they'll be able to reach an agreement. Besides, as Team 15 has never met the standards, the other teams don't treat them very well, so they won't listen to talk in time. The young man looked at the girl. Then he put his hand on her shoulder and told her not to be so pessimistic. They would just do their best. Then the main character added that he was the president of the company after all. If it came to negotiations on cooperation, then you could safely rely on him. The girl looked at the guy. She had no idea what company and what president they were talking about. Suddenly, someone shouted at the heroes to stop. It was a beastman. He told them that this was where Team 13's territory began, and then he asked about the reason for Team 15's leader's visit to their territory. Cannon hesitantly said that she needed help in meeting the quota, and asked to talk for a bit. The beast replied that she was completely inaudible, and his partner said that it was not worth wasting your time on them. Unlike them, they had something to do. Naruse grabbed the girl's robe and stepped forward. He apologized for coming uninvited, and then explained that they had come to propose a plan to fulfill the quota. The beastman asked what the boy was carrying. They had never been able to fulfill their quota. However, the boy claimed the opposite, and then he told that the 15th detachment had caught 14 boars and had already fulfilled its quota. The beast was surprised. Team 15 was very surprised by the number of boars caught. They do not believe what is happening. However, why did they come to Team 13 if their quota has already been met? Neris explains that after completing the quota, Garua gave them a new quota. By next week, they must catch 20 boars. Team 15 doesn't have much land, and in order to complete the quota, they need to cooperate with other teams. The beast listened to the guy and said that he understood why they came. However, they refuse. Demon and human will never be able to work together. They will never listen to man. The other beastmen began to support their comrades' words and chase away the protagonist. Kanan hung her head and realized that they had failed. However, Naru smiled slyly. He said that the head of Kanon told him that they were doing really badly with hunting. In addition, they were barely keeping up with the norm. The beastman asked about what the guy said. The protagonist continued saying that it was all Garua's fault. If they didn't meet the quota, they would be punished and their salaries would be reduced. If they helped them, he would be able to meet their quota too. The beast looked at the guy in shock. The young man added that he needed their help for just one day. Almost nothing was required of them, just to stand nearby. Team 13 was very surprised by these demands. Neru said that once they had fulfilled the quota of 13 teams, they would be grateful if they gave them the surplus. The beast woman looked and turned to the chief. He noticed that Nerus was only human. His face showed shock and surprise. They can't trust people. However, the hero didn't give up. He said that if they couldn't fulfill the quota, they could give him up as food instead of boars. The main character is serious. The boss of the 13th team looked at his comrades and then said that he cannot trust a person and he does not want to help a person. However, he is the leader of Team 13 and is responsible for his subordinates. With confidence in his eyes, he said that he would help the protagonist and do everything necessary to fulfill the norm. Kanan was surprised. In Narus, he promised that he would not disappoint the Beastman. The members of Team 15 are surprised that they were able to come to an agreement with Squad 13. Narus confirms everything and says that he and the leader went to him. He then adds that he must fulfill the norm for Team 13, and they will help them deal with the boar shortage. The team members understand that they now need to catch even more boars. As a result, the norm has become 30 boars. They think that this is impossible. The guy from the team doesn't understand why out of all the teams they turned to 13. They're also one of the weakest teams among all. He suggests that it would have been safer to come to an agreement with Team 14, as they have a much larger territory. Narus explained that it is just the opposite. It is better to choose a team with a problem with meeting the norm. He thought that their team was able to catch 14 boars only because they had not met the quota before. One of the guys concluded that since they had not caught them, their number had increased. The hero confirmed this. Neru said that he would explain to them how to catch boars. Someone told him to shut up. The stuffed dog said that they would not help him. They were not his comrades. The guy thought about what had started again. The slime asked if he wasn't afraid of not fulfilling the quota and angering the boss. The girl with the horn answered that he was the boss's lackey. Most likely, it was he who told them that they were in the tavern. There was no way they could catch 30 boars anyway. It was a waste of time. Naru shouted that it was okay. Asagiri didn't have to work this time. The creature turned and asked if that was true. The hero smiled at her for falling for the trick. The best way to gather a team is to lure the monster with the loudest voice. Asagiri said that if she could have fun, then she would agree. From the words and actions in the tavern, you can tell that they have another monster like that. The protagonist turned to Kamulu and said that he had a request. He replied that he didn't trust him much either. Narus told him that he didn't have to believe him. Only his desire to fulfill the quota would be enough. Camille agreed, but he won't work for free. With his trap, maybe it will work. Slime thinks that everyone has gone crazy. They probably don't understand the scale. He started to say that he and Natsume couldn't do it and they didn't agree. He turned and told his comrade to go, but there was no one there anymore. Everyone was around Narius, who was explaining the plan. Slime was left alone. He finally decided to give in and will also help. Team 13 and Team 15 meet. The protagonist explains the plan. Everyone is busy with their own business. The plush monster watched from the bushes. But the next moment he was already reporting to the boss that they had teamed up with Team 13. It seemed they had decided to seriously engage in hunting. The monster does not understand why they listened to the man. Why this man? Garawa replied that it was possible because of their hopeless situation. Last time, to fulfill the quota, they used iron bars. They needed to break them. Without these bars, they would become losers again. The creature was confident that his 6 would cope. The plush monster was doubtful. The boss said they couldn't let this little girl take all the credit. In the morning, Kanon runs to her comrades and tells them that something bad happened to their cells. The leader was very worried about this. The cage was broken. They don't understand what happened here. The slime doesn't understand who could have done this. The plush monster stands and says nothing. Asagiri asked what they would do. They would not be able to catch the boars and carry out Narus's plan either. Kamol said that it would be difficult to rethink their plan. Narus stepped forward and said that there was no problem, and this time they wouldn't need bars. His plan would work without them. Everyone looked at him in bewilderment. The boars stood by the hand and drank. The hero asks Kamel about his readiness. He confirms everything. Then they start. Everything happened very quickly. The boars sensed danger and started running. Camille thought about them running away. And then he realized what exactly the protagonist wanted. The animals ran at very high speed. Suddenly, they stopped abruptly and ran in the other direction. They changed direction when they saw Team Boss number 13. Now the Beastman realized that what that man had said was true. There are several reasons why it is so difficult to hunt wild boars. First of all, they are nocturnal. If you try to hunt them during the day, it will be very difficult to track them down. Wild boars also have a very good sense of smell. The girl from Team 13 was surprised. Naris goes on to explain that they can tell humans and monsters apart by smell, which he feels is where the main problem with meeting the quota lies. The boss of Team 13 asked why this was happening. He answered that they had encountered boars several times before, and each time, they ran away. In other words, they were afraid of monsters, and so they deliberately avoided them. So how should they hunt? Naru said that he would use their sense of smell to his advantage. His comrades did not understand him. Knowing that they would avoid monsters at all costs, it was easy to control their escape direction. And knowing their direction, you can easily set a trap. The hero thinks that they set a trap made of vines strengthened by Natsume's magic. Even Dolma couldn't get out of them. Slime turns to Dolma. He says that it's time to launch Asagiri. The girl recalled the guy's words that she wouldn't even have to move. She shouted to her friend that he should not even dare to leave her. However, Dolma did not listen to her and raised his hand with the girl in his hand. And the next moment, he threw her with a very huge force. Asagiri screamed. She flew down the corridor of the trap created by Narus. She screamed that she would remember this to the guy when they met the quota. The boars noticed the approaching monster. Panic and horror were on their faces. The girl raises her hand to strike and deals a blow to a nearby boar. It was a powerful attack that could be seen from afar. Team 13's boss, seeing many dead boars, said they were doing a good job. That's all great. It didn't have to be the bait this time. The beastman asked if that was his magic. Narus replied that he couldn't use magic. He just knew how to organize the work of a team. Until now, the 15th group hadn't been able to work together. They weren't a team at all. Now, everyone is pursuing the same goal, and everyone is doing their part to help the team achieve the goal. By working as a team, they will be able to achieve greater goals that they cannot achieve alone. Kanon eavesdropped on their conversation. The boss of Team 13 noticed that the Demon Lord thought the same. These words surprised the boy. Then Asagiri came up to them and asked the boy if he wanted to tell her anything. She was angry. The boy said that she had done a good job. The girl pounced on him and pointed out that he wasn't telling her about it. She agreed because she thought it would be an easy job. The guy tried to explain that she hadn't moved a single step. She screamed that it didn't work that way. Narus looked away and apologized for not telling her right away. They had caught 6 boars today. They only had to do it 4 more times. Asagiri shouted that she hated the guy. There was an explosion. Asagiri fell to the ground, exhausted. Team 13's boss remarked that the guy actually did it. It was unbelievable. The hero stood in front of a mountain of boar bodies and understood that the quota had been met. They rejoiced and rejoiced. The girl was lying on the ground and saying that she would never agree to this again. The main character extended his hand to her. He said that she had done a great job. She should be happy because she had played a key role in their plan. Thanks to her hard work, they were able to meet the quota of both Team 13 and Team 15. The young man smiled brightly and thanked the girl. She was surprised and blushed. Then she pulled the guy's hand away and told him to shut up. She was outraged that he dared to use her. This was some kind of joke. She pointed at him and said that he should buy her a drink. He agreed. Nereus then bowed to his comrades and thanked them for their work. They had met the quota thanks to their teamwork. Kanon did not respond. Then the young man thanked the 13th team for helping with the work. The boss replied that it was not the boy who needed to be thanked. He said that Chief Garua pays them little. However, thanks to the guy, they will have something to eat. For this, he thanked the guy. He also added that if something happens, he can rely on him. Next time, he will also help, because the main character is a reliable person. The young man thanked him. Kenon offered to deliver the boars. Dolma said that the boss would be surprised. Slime offered to go. And the boss of Team 13 also wanted to go with them. However, Naru stopped them and told them to wait. He reminded them that they still had 3 days before the inspection. He asked them to tell him about the organization in the Demon Lord's army. Kanon asked again what the guy meant by organization. She, of course, hadn't told him about it yet. But did she really need to tell him about it right now? The guy with a serious face agreed and sincerely asked her about it. The boss of Team 13 also agreed and asked if anyone had something to write on. Kanon said that she did. Arriving here, the guy was haunted by this. They have heads and bosses, weekly quotas and workers. The Demon Lord's army is overly organized. Kanon explains that since they don't have a Demon Lord, now the heads of each department decide the policies of the overall system. The current Demon Lord's army is like a large system. The girl drew the entire system on a piece of paper. It includes the HR department, the administration department, the management department, the finance department, the training department, the development department, the construction department, and the purchasing department. Their structure is just like a company. The devilish president at the top, then the director, deputy director, manager, bosses, group leaders, and, at the very bottom, subordinates. Neros heard that the army was created by the previous demon lord. The boss of Team 13 confirms this and adds that he was the one who came up with this system. Too many coincidences. The hero is sure that the demon lord's army was created based on the organization of companies. There's no doubt that the previous demon lord was an alien like him. The heroes are walking along a path through the forest. Naruse is very tired. He's breathing heavily. The boss of Team 13 suggested that they rest for a while, but the young man refused. He asked how long the journey would take. He said about an hour. The guy was surprised. He needed to move more. If only he knew that he would end up in another world. It was all because he only played board games. The boss said that in general it was very fast. He wants to meet with their department head. Kano noted that it was not yet time to hand it in. Will everything be okay? The hero answered that they were going there because they had finished ahead of schedule. Until now, the quota for the purchasing department was 5 boars, and it was difficult to hunt even that amount. However, the deputy head of the department, Garwa, increased it by 15 boars upon the first successful completion of the quota. And suddenly the quota is now 20. And this is clearly an impossible goal. No, it should even be considered that it was raised to prevent them from achieving it. The monsters were surprised. In general, hunting is only possible if there is prey. If 20 boars are killed every week, they will quickly die out. The beastmen agreed. Even if they hand over the standard to Deputy Chief Garua, there is a chance that it will be increased again. That is why he now wants to meet with the department head and make sure that this amount is appropriate. The beastman asked if the hero knew she would be promoted. Then why did he have to hunt 20 boars? Naruse replied that it was simply necessary. There are those who can fulfill the norm, and there are those who cannot. In such a situation, most likely they will listen to the one who was able to do it. The beastman understood what the guy was talking about. Working on an impossible quota can only ruin your health. Before you fall in front of an impossible task, you need to do one thing. Tell the person above the deputy chief about the situation so that he can intervene. If this were a regular company, the hero would have contacted the labor department or the HR department. But it seems that there is no such thing here. The beastman asked the boy about what he had just said. He quoted him as saying that he should tell the person above the deputy chief about the situation so that he could intervene. The boy confirmed this, and then the wolf asked the boy in horror if he was really going to talk to the boss. The young man did not understand their reaction at all, and said that if there was no other way, then nothing could be done. They came to some tower. It's a service tower, the place where the boss usually works. They started to climb the stairs. Naruse thought that, given their reactions, this boss was definitely crazy. Perhaps he is the type of boss who is too stubborn and does not know how to listen to others. Or he is the type who loses his temper, which is why the team does not like him. It can be assumed that he, like Deputy Chief Garwa, likes to set up his subordinates. The hero thinks that perhaps he needs to prepare himself mentally. Kanon turned to Naruse and said that she just wants to warn him. She asks him to cover his ears when she knocks on the door. It's scary. The heroes approached the door. The girl knocked on the door. The heroes covered their ears. Suddenly, someone greeted Kanon and Alan in a very loud voice. The boss noted that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He ran up to the girl, took her hand, and started shaking it. Several months had passed since their meeting, but to the boss, it seemed like many years. The hero thought that it seemed he was mistaken, that Elsie had noticed Naruse. He ran up to him and said that he was the servant that the 15th team had caught. He was the head of the supply department, and then she asked about how a man ended up alone in the territory of the Demon King's troops. The hero answered that he did not remember. He understood that the woman suspected him. Would this really bring him trouble? However, Elsie said that she understood everything. She often forgets everything, too. Here they are, comrades in misfortune. The young man realized what kind of boss she is. Elsie is happy that her subordinates come to visit her. Kanon offers to help her pour tea, but she declines and tells him to sit down. Norse thought that she seemed friendly, even nice in a way. He sat down on a chair and noticed that the boss had a lot of documents. She replied that her magic was endurance enhancing, so she could work all night without any problem. However, none of her subordinates had visited her for a long time, except for Garla, so she was really pleased with their visit. The deputy chief came here quite often. The woman asked about the purpose of their visit. The team leaders were silent. Then Naruz asked permission to start talking. He said that he wanted to consult with her about the norm. Elsie was very happy with the words about consulting. The young man did not understand her reaction. He explains that they, 15 teams, until recently, had a norm of 5 boars each week. But this week, they suddenly increased it to 20. They consider such demands absolutely unreasonable. They want to know the opinion of the boss. The woman thought about it and said that this was a problem. Garwa is in charge of all matters related to hunting. The young man was surprised. She was initially in charge of the collection. She knows little about managing the hunt. Garua did not stand aside. He asked her to entrust him with the position of the hunt manager. He offered to help her, so she entrusted all the affairs of the hunt manager to him. The guy clarified that it turns out that she is satisfied with this norm. She replied that Garula had decided that they could handle such a norm, so nothing could be done. The hero is shocked. The team leaders say nothing. The guy didn't expect that. She trusts her subordinates too much. No wonder these two are silent. She may be good, but she certainly wasn't a good boss. Naruz was wondering what he should do. Should he start over? What should he do? Then the woman said that it was really amazing. She says that the head of the hunt delivers a fixed amount of prey here each time, and this is very helpful. Here the young man realized something. However, in a situation where it was difficult to get 5 pieces, a random success in catching 14 boars could hardly increase the fixed number. Elsie praised the boys for catching as many as 14 wild boars. The guy realized that the boss was not informed about the loot. He said that he had everything. He stood up and thanked for today. His comrades do not understand what is happening. The woman told him to come whenever he wants. The young man agreed and left with her permission. One of the leaders said that the department head was, as always, in his element. In the end, they failed to change the norm. There were some interesting moments in the conversation with the chief. Thanks to this conversation, he began to understand approximately what the deputy chief does. But after they solve the problem with him, the biggest obstacle that prevents him from becoming a demon lord will stand in his way. He is a human. Most of the demon army harbored a strong grudge against humans. Alan asked what the hero would do. They couldn't hunt 20 boars every week. Cannon apologized to the guy. As the team leader, she should be stronger and more responsible. But she always relies on Narusan. She always thinks that he will cope with everything and help everyone. She is very ashamed. If she had been a good team leader, she would have been able to prevent the increase in the norm. She said that it was her fault and asked for forgiveness. The hero asked her if she really wanted to become a good leader. She confirmed it. But she doesn't have the same power as him. The power of a leader, if you can call it that. She can become a deputy chief, a chief, or take a higher position. If she wants it, he can help her. She looked at him with hope and asked the guy to talk to her a little. Cannon apologizes to the guy for suddenly asking to talk to her one-on-one. The hero replied that he wanted to talk to her himself. He asked what she wanted to discuss. The girl fell silent, catching her breath. She said that she wanted to become a good boss, just like he said. The girl knows that such words from her may sound absurd, but she wants to change. The young man turned to the leader. However, she said that she was clumsy. The hero asked her about it again. She explains that her family consists of those who possess strong magic, and even before the creation of the demon army, her family kept the monsters in the area under control. Her brothers and sisters were no exception. They possessed very strong attack magic. However, the magic that awakened in her was nothing compared to that of her brothers and sisters. The girl trembled and clutched her robe as she said all this. The hero remembered the moment when she used magic. Naryuz says that while it's certainly not as effective as attack magic, he still thinks that healing magic is pretty cool too. The girl insists otherwise. She removed the hood from her head with trembling hands. 166. The guy noticed something on her head. It was a horn. The hero was very surprised. Canon explains that in her family, horn size and magic power are proportional to each other. Her siblings grew beautiful horns, but she was born with only one horn. With her magic power, she can't even completely heal wounds. The boy realized who had cured him then. The girl continued to say that this was why she was constantly treated as a disgrace to the family. After she joined the demon army, she was appointed as the team leader only because of her background. Because of this, no one wanted to listen to her. They couldn't meet the quota. Naruz called the girl. She continued to talk without stopping about how when he showed up, he got everyone working very quickly, and even got other teams involved in meeting the quota. It was truly amazing. He did something that she was completely incapable of. She then adds that when he said he could help her, she was very happy. The boy looked at her, and Canon clenched her fists. She said that this gives hope that even someone like her can change and become like the leader of Team 13, who protects his comrades, and like Narusan, who doesn't give up no matter how hard it is. She wants to become exactly this kind of leader. The young man looks at the girl and says nothing. The girl's gaze was full of determination. The hero thought that this girl was just like him then. Canon turned to the guy. He looked up at her and thanked her for this conversation. And then he said that at all costs, he would ask her to let him help her. He extended his hand to shake hers. The girl was surprised at first, but then extended her hand in response and said that she would try. Neruz decided to trust this girl's desire. In order to return to his world, in order to become a demon lord, she will take step by step with him, the man. The girl asked the guy about their conversation. He answered that he had already come up with a solution. He decided not to delay. This would be their strategy meeting. He had an idea. Canon clarified what she needed to do first. The young man did not answer, but said that first they needed to make the leader of the Canon team the deputy head of the department. Garwa was surprised that they were able to meet the quota. A subordinate reports that the boards of the 13th and 15th teams have literally just been delivered. The deputy chief couldn't believe that they actually did it. Key thinks that this is all because of that man. He intervened. The employee asked what they should do with this loot now. He said that they can't give such a quantity to the boss, and they need to deal with it as usual. The carts are standing near the warehouse. Garu is writing something down. He said to pass the note to the boss. The plush monster turned to the boss. However, the deputy boss beat him to it and said that this little girl shouldn't have been allowed to take all the credit. But how did that happen? He apologized and said that he had broken the cage, as they said. He shouted at him not to contradict him. Since when did he become so important? The monster became sad and apologized. Garua hissed and called him useless. And then he said that he was disappointed in Kildall. Then someone came into the hangar and asked for forgiveness for disturbing them at such an hour. It was Narus and Canon. Kildall recognized them immediately. Garua asked them what they wanted there. The hero replied that they didn't want anything. They just wanted to talk a little about some of his misconduct. The deputy chief did not understand what the guy was talking about. It all started with one remark from the department head. Delivering a fixed amount of resources each week using such an unstable method as hunting is almost impossible. Moreover, despite the fact that their 15th group obtained 14 units last week, the number of deliveries remains the same. And here one might think that the deputy chief is appropriating resources for himself. The conclusion that immediately suggests itself. Garwa and Kildall remain silent. The young man continues to say that perhaps the original norm set by the department head was much lower, and the surplus was sold, filling his pocket with money. Moreover, the deputy head set inflated standards for the teams and reduced the salaries of their members if they were not met. It turns out that we can assume that he appropriated this part of the revenue for himself as well. Garwa started laughing. Kildo looked at him questioningly. The deputy chief noted that the guy was not one to mince words. You have to know how to confuse people like that. Kennen wanted to say something, but the young man stopped her. He asked if this was really a fabrication. Naruse asked her to refute all this or to support her position with something. Garawa did not calm down and said that there was not a single piece of such meat in this warehouse. Everything he said was pure slander. He asked the boy if they were prepared for the consequences of throwing around such fantasies. The boy shook his head, and he asked what the head of the department thought about this. The head of the deputy head widened when the head of the department appeared in the doorway. She was clearly unhappy. There are several characters in a spacious building. A Mujina in a cap stands at the entrance. A young man and a girl in a hood stand in the center and look at each other. A boar demon is located at a distance from them. He is surprised by the arrival of the boss and asks if it is really her. The deputy, folding his arms across his chest, looked at the girl who had entered with a kind smile on his face. He said that he was very glad that she had come and was present in this place. Then he curiously asked for what purpose she had decided to visit him. At the same time, it was clear that the demon was clearly nervous. His behavior betrayed his excitement. Mudzina confirmed the man's words and said, looking angrily at the boar, that she had come to check whether the deputy chief was embezzling resources. The boar was horrified and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. The boar, indignant, began to raise his voice, and he asked if the chief really believed the words of a man without evidence. Naruse put his hand in his pocket, trying to get something. A jelly ball appeared on his palm, making sounds. The deputy chief immediately recognized it as a slime from Team 15. The young man was communicating with someone through it and was immersed in the conversation, since, on the other hand, important information was being transmitted. After this, Naruse turned to the chief and hurried to tell him that right now, someone's cargo had been detained right in the process of delivery, greatly surprising the boar and his assistant with this fact. The boar demon, who had an impressive size and distinctive features, and the demon, who looked like a stuffed cat with buttons for eyes, were in a state of complete shock at what they had just heard. They looked at each other and asked the man again, not believing their ears. The deputy chief, unable to contain his emotions, exclaimed with obvious bewilderment that such a thing simply could not be. He sincerely did not believe that the hero really had any evidence that could confirm his words. Holding the slimy mass in his hands, Narus explained that their unique feature was their ability to split. The bodies of the sent boars had been previously filled with pieces of this slime. Garwa started making excuses, trying to get out of the situation. He looked extremely awkward and said that the delivery was planned directly for the boss, but he was not aware of the situation that had happened, since it was not because of him. The slime began to make strange and unusual sounds again. Narus, watching closely, turned to the hooded girl and, without wasting time, brought the slimy mass closer to her. She, slightly surprised, listened attentively to all the information that was given to them. The demon Mujina, wearing a cute cap, slowly raised her head when Kanon spoke to her. She listened carefully to the girl's words, all the while keeping her eyes on the slime. It turned out that Kimura's subordinate had obtained an invoice that should have listed the quantity of goods being shipped. The deputy chief tried not to show it, but he felt the pressure building. Two emotions were fighting inside him: fear of the possible consequences and anger at the man. He buried his nose in the paper and thoughtfully asked what was written on the invoice addressed to the boss. The question was immediately followed by an answer. The invoice contained the team number, the name of the product, and the number of items. According to the document, the 15th team was to deliver 3 boars. The deputy chief, realizing that he had been caught red-handed, felt cold sweat break out on his forehead. He had not expected to be exposed at that very moment. All his thoughts had become one big chaos, and he could not find words to explain his behavior. The chief was the first to break the silence. Her voice, after being confronted with what had happened, became dejected, and she said that she had to apologize to Garwa. Everyone turned their gaze to her. The girl lowered her gaze and continued speaking. She admitted that due to her inexperience, she agreed to the offer of the demon boar. She completely entrusted him with matters related to hunting, and he became the deputy chief. The leader understood that it was her responsibility, and she had indeed made an unforgivable mistake. At that moment, Gorwa listened attentively to every word spoken. Garwa again. The girl pointed her finger at him and raised her voice a little, asking if he was stealing resources. The boss looked confident and focused. The demon cat looked at Garwa, waiting for his reaction. The boar was shaking with anger, and the fact that his illegal activities had been exposed. The deputy chief began to mumble something under his breath. His eyes were wild, as if he had nothing left to lose. He said that he wanted to say something, and it would be better for Naruse not to hear these words. As he said each word separately, Garua's voice began to sound more like a growl. His gaze began to become more insane. He said that he should not be written off. As soon as this was said, a strong gust of wind began to flow from the vice chief. The dust around rose into the air, forming small clouds. The hooded girl and the roost began to be blown away a little, so they covered themselves with their hands. The demon cat tried to call out to Garwa, but it was in vain. The hero looked up and was very surprised by what he saw. He thought it must be a joke. A huge shadow covered the three standing creatures. The clouds of dust raised by the strong wind had not yet completely dispersed. The guy was ready for anything and thought, if only it was not magic. In front of them stood Garawa, a huge man. In comparison to him, the others seemed very small. He looked menacingly at the characters, and then shouted that he would pay them all. Swinging his right fist, the huge boar began to say that he would not allow himself to be caught. Steam was coming from his body due to the use of magic, and from this, the boar began to look threatening, making it clear that he was not going to joke and would fight seriously. The blow was aimed straight at Naruse and the girl. Horrified, the boy only managed to exclaim a curse and pulled the captain to himself to protect him. His eyes showed readiness to meet the blow, but also fear of the inevitable. However, fortunately, Naruse and the girl he was protecting were not hit. At the last moment, the Mujina repelled the giant hand's attack by jumping and showing the strength hidden in her furry body at the right moment, thus saving the people behind her. Garwa didn't expect such actions from the chief. Naruse and the girl he was still covering were no less surprised, but their faces also showed relief. The chief landed on the ground in front of the huge demon. With lightning speed, she began to move towards the deputy chief, preparing to deliver a crushing blow with her fist. A moment later, the demon Mujina attacked Garawa, aiming straight for his face. Their contact created a shockwave so powerful that it seemed to cut through the wind. The attack sent the boar flying straight into the stone floor, which shattered with a loud sound. The shards flew in all directions. The enemy was defeated and lay unconscious, face down. Adjusting her cap and clenching the fist of her left hand, the chief walked towards the heroes. The wind rose from the fall of the boar's carcass, which ruffled the medallion on the chief's neck. Naruse and the girl looked at Garawa's body with apprehension and thought about this blow. Their eyes showed great surprise. His magic dissipated. The demon began to shrink and return to his normal size. The guy thought that the boss's magic was to increase his stamina, and now he saw it with his own eyes and was very surprised, apparently beginning to respect and fear the boss at the same time. Like Doma, who has considerable strength in addition to magic, the Mujina has outstanding physical abilities. And remembering this, Naruse's mind was filled with moments that reminded him of how he first encountered demon magic. The boy believed that this was the reason she was able to become a boss, despite the fact that she couldn't manage her subordinates properly. She and a good manager are contradictory words. But as the boy had assumed, the demon army was terribly absurd. The hooded girl looked at Naruse. She then called out to the boy and, drawing attention to herself, asked if she could heal Garawa's wounds. Her voice was quiet, but there was determination and hope in it. The young man was surprised by this proposal, but agreed. But he also said that if he suddenly woke up and started to rage again, they would ask the chief to calm him down again. The girl bowed and thanked him. Mero remained standing as the captain walked towards the boar demon and the chief walked towards the boar. An awkward silence hung between them. Mudzina approached the young man. He thanked her for her help and bowed slightly. The girl was glad that they were okay. She looked a little downcast. With a serious expression, she said that what she had said earlier about the deputy chief was true. She recalled what happened during their meeting. The chief did not believe that Garwa could lie to her, and exclaimed this very loudly. Her words were so loud that they could be heard even on the street. They were in the chief's office. Narus calmly and confidently said that there could be no mistake. However, the chief confidently replied that Garwa had always helped her, and she could not believe such a thing without proof. The captain, after these words, pulled an envelope from under her cloak. She handed the document to the chief and said that it provided data on the amount of catch of the teams for the previous week and the week before last. Together with the leader Canon, they visited the leaders of each team and asked about the number of deliveries. The boy asked the Mujina to compare the data on the invoices. After a few moments, he asked if it was true that the numbers on them were slightly off. The boss was confused, but carefully studied the papers. Narus then went on to say that this information was insufficient, which is why they wanted to provide irrefutable evidence. His voice was calm, but there was a sense of determination in it. He paused to emphasize the importance of his words, and then made a request to the chief, the Mujina, decisively, and asked if she, as the head of the department, could solve this problem herself. The head looked down at the floor with a dejected expression, and her eyes showed sadness and regret, because she felt guilty for what happened. Now she stood and also did not raise her gaze. Mujina sadly said that she had completely entrusted Garwa with the work related to hunting, and this gave him the opportunity to carry out machinations. Watching her subordinate being healed at the moment, she continued to speak. The boss blamed herself for this happening, and also believed that if she had kept an eye on him, then perhaps he would not have stolen. The demoness looked very upset. Tears were starting to appear in her eyes. She felt a huge guilt towards all the hunting teams. Narus, hearing this, called the chief, thanks to which the demoness came to her senses a little. In a calm voice, he said that the girl listened carefully to their side of the story, and then made a decision based on reliable evidence and solved the problem. As he spoke, the Mujina finally raised her head and looked at the boy. The hero put his hand on his heart and said that he thought it was great that his boss was able to see through someone else's point of view. He thanked the girl with all his heart. The leader paused for a moment, looking at Narus carefully, then said that he was a really good person, and she sincerely believed so. The guy tried to object, but he failed. The boss continued that, to tell the truth, she thought that when she came here, she would only be reproached. But the hero, on the contrary, supported the Mujina. She said that the guy was much more like a boss than she was. The guy did not expect such words and stood in a stupor. The demoness extended her paw towards the man and thanked Narus. She also said that she was glad to meet him. For the first time in the time they had spent in this place, the Mujina smiled. The hero extended his hand in response and shook the soft paw, saying that he was also glad about it. Remembering the vice chief, Narus decided to ask what the Mujina would do with him. The girl thought for a moment, then said that Garwa would be removed from his position. She spoke calmly, but her voice conveyed determination and confidence in the correctness of this decision. Then she would hand it over to the supervisor. However, she was much more concerned about another question. She wondered out loud who would be the next deputy chief, because if the problem was not solved quickly, the work would gradually accumulate. Enthusiastically, Naru said that in that case, he had a proposal. The girl in the hood approached the boy, and now they both looked at the boss. The boy pointed at himself with his hand and asked the boss if she wanted to entrust these positions to them. Naruse, being completely confident in the proposed candidates, pointed to himself with his hand and asked the chief if she would entrust this position to him and the head of canon. Mudzina was surprised and asked again if he was really proposing his candidacy for the position of deputy chief. She looked at the girl and the guy with wide-open eyes. The young man said that this time the team leader gave precise instructions to her subordinates to collect evidence. To investigate the issue of the number of deliveries, they cooperated with all the team leaders, thus emphasizing her competence and intelligence. Naruse paused for a moment and looked at the hooded girl standing right behind him. She saw his gaze and became a little nervous when he wanted to continue his speech. The boy recalled how the leader of Team 15 was surprised when the man suggested that she ask the leaders of the other teams for the number of deliveries herself. He argued that there was no point in directly accusing Garua of crimes. Instead, they should cooperate with the boss. However, because Naruse is a human, he has a number of limitations in the demon world. Even if you were to negotiate with the other team leaders, it might not work. Headmaster Kanon countered that Team 15 was not respected by the others. She was worried about whether they would listen to her. The guy lowered his gaze, saying that he understood the leader's feelings perfectly. However, this must be done to achieve her goal. At the last phrase, he raised his gaze and looked seriously straight at the girl. The demoness, hearing these words, immediately changed her mood. Her face still expressed confusion and uncertainty, but the desire to fulfill the goal gave her strength. She clenched her fists, as if remembering her dream. Raising her hands higher, she confidently said that she would do everything possible. This time, her gaze no longer looked scared. It exuded determination. Her whole body was ready to rush into battle. Naruse smiled approvingly at this reaction. Realizing that the leader was ready for action, he said that he would tell her about the tricks of negotiations right away. The girl asked him again in surprise, not expecting that it would be necessary to use various tricks in this manner. The guy began to explain that if you ask the other person directly about supplies, he will be wary. In negotiations, it is important to convince the partner that there are more advantages than disadvantages. At that moment, Naruse imagined a game of board games, where in the first option there was an immediate refusal, and in a second the other person thought about it. Headmaster Kanon listened attentively to his words and thoughtfully repeated the phrases to herself, trying to better understand their meaning. Her eyebrows wrinkled slightly in thought, and her eyes sparkled with interest and attention. Each word seemed important to her, and she tried to catch all the nuances in order to draw the right conclusions. The boy continued to say that the current strict norm was due to Garua's deception, and if he was exposed and fired, then fulfilling the norm would be much easier. If the girl could clearly convey this position, then it would be easy to contact her. The demoness silently thought about the boy's words, and then called him. She pointed her finger at herself and asked seriously if she could use her last name during the negotiations. She wanted to know if her authority and status would help her achieve her goals, or if she would have to rely only on her words and skills. Her gaze was focused, waiting for an answer, because a lot depended on it. Naruse-san was shocked by this question and did not know what to say. His eyes widened in surprise and he froze for a moment. He did not expect the girl to come to such a decision, or at this moment. A mixed feeling arose inside him, surprise and a little confusion, because he understood the importance of the decision. Headmaster Kanon began to explain that from the position of the leaders of other teams, they may not be sure. After all, it is possible that their norm may increase after the appointment of a new deputy chief. And if the dismissal plan fails, then Garua may begin to take revenge on everyone. The captain of the 15th team's family name has quite a lot of influence among the Demon Lord's army, and she thought that if she swore by it, she could reduce the uncertainty, that is, these shortcomings. She voiced her thoughts and asked Naruse if this was true. The guy didn't answer right away, as he was surprised by the sincerity and this solution to the problem, because the demoness always perceived her family as a heavy burden. After a pause, the girl awkwardly asked him what he thought about this plan. Nerus approved of the captain's idea and called it good, suggesting to try it. Now, he stood before the chief and, after all that had been said, waited for her answer. Finishing his thought, the boy said that they would do everything possible to help the Mujina. The chief looked a little confused and thoughtful. She said that she had made a decision. At that moment, the head of Kanon and Narisa-san looked at the chief with enthusiasm, hoping to hear the desired answer. However, to their surprise, the Mujina firmly stated that her answer was no. She would not agree to make them her deputies. Her voice was clear and unhesitating. Everyone present felt the weight of her words. The boss's gaze was firm. Her expression showed confidence in the correctness of her choice. It was a quiet, starry night. Among the trees stood a lonely wooden house. It was quite old. From a bird's-eye view, it looked small and fragile among the tall trees that surrounded it. But despite this, it was quite stable. Nerus laid down on the blanket with a long exhale. He was completely exhausted, so he just lay flat on his stomach. His face showed relaxation, because after his busy day, he was finally able to devote time to himself. Being in the center of the house where all the flaws were visible from the inside, the roughly assembled walls, among which even the disorder did not seem strange. He reasoned out loud about the terrible drafts here, because of the holes. Of course, he would like to live in a slightly more decent place. He thought that, judging by the lack of observation, this only confirmed his confidence in the collar. He didn't even want to run now. He continued to lie there silently, his face pressed to the floor. Very soon it became too hard for him, so he lifted the edge of the blanket and saw that there was nothing else there. He rolled over onto his back and said out loud that, compared to the prison cell, this house was much better. Nerus looked at the ceiling, still lying on the blanket in his clothes. The guy remembered how many events had happened in his life recently. Suddenly, he was sucked into a board game, where he was almost killed immediately, and then he fell under someone else's control. The guy's face looked very tired. Thinking about what had happened again, he became scared. There were situations where the guy risked his life and acted recklessly. He thought that with the plan to promote Kanon to vice chief and return to his world and company, he might have been a bit hasty. The boy recalled the boss's refusal. Mujina said that the result was very important for the Demon Lord's army. Team Kanon had shown good results recently, but if you look at their earlier achievements, they were clearly not impressive. The boss was really grateful for the help, but choosing the next deputy is a separate issue. The girl said this calmly. Looking at the members of the 15th team, Nerus's gaze fell. He bowed and asked the demoness for forgiveness because he thought he had been too intrusive. Utsina closed her eyes and thought again, because it was really a difficult matter. She did not understand what to do in this case and looked confused. Suddenly, she exclaimed that the girl had a great idea. The boss didn't just say it, she literally shouted it. Kanon and Narus looked at the boss questioningly and waited for an explanation. The Mujina's eyes lit up and a bright smile appeared on her face. She pointed her finger at the heroes. Enthusiastically, she suggested holding a competition for the position of deputy department head. Narus was at a loss. He did not understand how a competition of this type could be held, and how the Mujina imagined it. The boss, trying to hide her own misunderstanding, referred to the fact that she could not tell the details. Otherwise, it would not be fair. She turned to the exit and said that if Kanon managed to win, then no one should have any questions. The boss promised to inform about the date and time of the event later, and wished the heroes good luck, trying to leave as quickly as possible. There was an awkward pause. Narus and Kanon looked at each other silently, realizing that the boss had simply avoided answering. Now, lying on the hard floor, the guy thought that the Mujina had made this all up on the fly. He had no idea what kind of competition this would be. He raised his right hand up and looked at her. It wasn't the end. On the contrary, the guy had a great chance. If he could gain recognition from the department chief and other leaders, his position in the Demon Lord's army would become more secure than it was now. Naruse had been risking his life up until this point. Still looking at his raised hand, he said that there was no other choice but to continue moving towards the goal. He confidently clenched his fist and then purposefully said that he would use this competition as a launch pad for his career advancement. On the appointed day and time, all the team commanders gathered at the service tower. Around the heroes there were many different demons. Naruse kept turning around as he caught the gaze of other creatures. They looked away as soon as they saw the boy looking at them. The young man felt awkward and wondered if he was even allowed to be in such a place. Kanan tried to calm him down because she had received permission from the boss, so everything was fine and there was no need to worry. Someone approached them and confirmed her words. It was Alan, the captain of one of the teams. He confirmed that the man would be considered Kanan's property, so there shouldn't be any problems. Damon was interested in why the chief had gathered them all and what she wanted to talk about. Naruse told them what had happened and passed on information about the competition for the title of deputy chief. While the three of them were talking, another creature approached them, clearly not expecting to see heroes here. A beautiful demoness with a black ponytail approached Kanon, Alan, and Naruse. She called out the name of Team 15's captain. The hooded girl turned towards the voice and also called Sufil-san by name. The captain of Team 14 bowed slightly and said that she was happy for Kanon-san, since her team had been doing well lately. The captain of Team 15 awkwardly thanked the demoness. Souffle came close to Kanon and, with a terrifying expression on her face, asked what privileges the girl had received from her family this time. The hooded girl exclaimed that she had not received anything. At this time, Narus asked Alan about who this girl was. The demon said the name and the team. He also said that her team had the most outstanding results among their groups in boar hunting. They had consistently met the quota assigned by Garwa on time. Naru-san looked at the demoness suspiciously. Souffle continued to harass Kanon and said that she had recently heard that the girl had a new subordinate, a human. At that moment, Naru silently looked at them from a distance. Mocking Kanon, Souffle said that if it was relatives who sent such a gift, then it was very sweet. The girl in the hood resolutely denied her words. Souffle said that there was nothing shameful about it, and also called Kanon soft-bodied, because in the demoness's opinion, she really needed a person who would take care of her well-being. Alan joined the conversation, trying to end it. Immediately after, the heroes heard footsteps from the tower. The boss came out in front of everyone and prepared to begin her speech. She stood confidently with her hands behind her back. Everyone focused their attention on the Mujina and listened quietly to her. The chief wished everyone a good morning, said that she was glad to see everyone here, and then immediately got to the point of why she had gathered them all today. Starting tomorrow and throughout this week, the boss was going to hold a competition for the position of deputy head of the department. The demons were puzzled by this information. No one except the heroes knew about the competition before. The boss, despite everyone already knowing what had happened, repeated that Garwa had been fired because of his lies. Muzina bowed to her subordinates and said that it was her mistake, that she completely entrusted her duties to him. The chief asked for forgiveness from everyone. After saying this, a buzz was heard from the captains. Raising her voice, the boss went on to say that she wanted to see how well everyone could bring their team together. Before appointing the next deputy, she planned to use that criterion for her final decision. Muzina began to announce the rules. Starting tomorrow and for the next week, teams would simply have to compete in meeting the standards. However, this time, they will have to perform different tasks than the teams worked on before. Souffle was surprised and asked again about the tasks they will have to do. Muzina explained that typically groups 1 through 5 are trap hunters, groups 6 through 10 are fishermen, and groups 11 through 15 are hunters. Now the leader wanted to mix up the group so that each team would have different tasks. Jumping off the threshold, the Mujina said that the average number of deliveries for each task would be considered as 100, and at the end it would be possible to evaluate what percentage each group was able to achieve this value. The girl quickly handed out sheets of paper to each team, on which the tasks and corresponding average values were written. The boss asked them to read them. Pausing for a moment, she happily said that, of course, the group with the highest completion percentage would be given a special bonus. Souffle carefully studied the received sheet and the information on it. Some demons were immediately inspired because this was a great chance to prove themselves and get the position of deputy chief. Nereus analyzed the situation and thought that it was very clever of the chief. First, she apologized for the deception of Deputy Chief Garrula. Right after that, she set a clear goal for those around her and organized a competition. The girl neutralized the discontent of the group leaders with a cash bonus, and now those around her have already forgotten about the deception of the previous deputy. The guy didn't know how spontaneous the boss was in her decisions, but if her actions were the result of calculations, then that impressed him quite a bit. The boss handed out a task sheet to Team 15 leader Kanon, who in turn thanked the Mujina. The demoness then turned her gaze to the young man. She smiled cheerfully and said that she would wait for their results. Her wide eyes showed playful interest. After the boss finished handing out sheets of paper to everyone, she said that she would go and wave to everyone. Of course, she didn't forget to tell everyone to give it their all starting tomorrow. While reviewing the tasks, the 15th group learned that they were sent to catch fish. They would also be competing with the 13th first and third groups. However, the one that bothered them the most was the 14th team, who would also be participating in the fishing. Souffle looked meaningfully at Kanon and said that she was counting on her leniency. As soon as Narus and Kanon came to their team, they immediately told them about the competition that the chief had started. The demons were shocked by such news and loudly asked if it was really about a battle between the groups. The guy calmly replied that they had just been informed about it by the department head. He experienced Daya Sha Vu. The demoness and slime were unhappy with this turn of events, as they had hoped to finally have a peaceful rest without Garwa as their deputy chief. They averted their gaze from the heroes. Nerus felt a strong sense of déjà vu again and exhaled loudly. Kanon addressed the team and said that she apologized for constantly causing trouble. The guy looked at the girl with a slight sense of surprise. Demoness was a little excited. She said that the group was able to take a step towards appointing a new person in charge of the hunt. This happened because everyone involved tried their best. Chief Kanon bowed. She wanted to ask the boys to help her again. The group members looked at each other. They were charmed by the captain's honesty and timidity. The slime and the demoness with the horn looked embarrassed. Stuttering a bit and continuing to look at each other, they said that they hadn't said they wouldn't help. Of course, the team was in business. Kanon happily thanked the boys. A slight smile lit up Narus's face. He was happy for the girl, as he saw her success in negotiations and growth as a captain. At this time, a demon in the form of a plush cat was watching them from afar, standing under a tree. The big demon was the first to ask what they would have to do in the competition. Kanon took out sheets of paper with information and began to explain that this time the team's duties were being moved. They would be competing in obtaining something they had not done before. The dark-haired demoness took the rules and exclaimed when she saw the numbers of the teams that would be participating with them. She was looking forward to the scale of the battle. Nerus asked what she saw on the sheet that led her to that conclusion. Slime began to explain that they would have to compete with Alan's 13th team. However, they had roughly the same strength, so the other participants were more stressful. Kimura continued to explain that the third team, led by Melan, ranks third among the trap hunting teams. In first place among these same groups is the first team, led by Ivanov. The large demon raised his finger and said that the 14th Sofla team was the leader among the other hunting groups. The dark-haired demoness was depressed and lowered her head. She said that their team was in the same group as the top two hunters. Nerus only now realized what the boss's words about waiting for results meant. Someone from the group again decided to offer to join Alan's team, to which the guy said that according to the rules of the competition, joining with others is prohibited. The demon lizard said that everything was clear with the opponents. However, Fishing is not the easiest thing. Naruse did not understand what Kimura meant and looked at him questioningly. He compared fishing to hunting wild boar and suggested that fishing with nets would be easier. The whole team thought about the guy's proposal, but for some reason did not say a word. The man did not understand what kind of atmosphere it was and why the general mood had changed so much. Kimura said that it would probably be better to see for themselves how the fishing was done. Kanon immediately supported him and suggested that they go to the sea right away. When the 15th team finally arrived at the required location, a beautiful landscape of an endless body of water opened up before them. Naruse's eyes were filled with glimmer from what he saw. He was inspired and did not expect that the sea in the demon land could be so beautiful. He spoke his thoughts out loud about the look of this place. He thought the demon lord's domain would be more neglected, but the waves here were so calm and the water was clear. Kanon was surprised by the guy's thoughts. She thought that there were more beautiful places in the lands of people. She even heard about the existence of a swimming culture. The guy looked from the water to the girl and asked if it was possible to swim here. Kimura paused for a moment and said that of course it was possible to go into the water, but there was one caveat. The lizard told the guy to just watch the fishing. Kimura cast the bait and watched carefully as the line created ripples in the water. The water was calm. Suddenly, the lizard jerked the fishing rod upward. At the end of it was a spotted fish that had just been pulled out of the water. Naruse began to cheer loudly as soon as he saw their catch. The boy looked at the fish and thought that it seemed to be ordinary because its size was about 20 centimeters. The lizard deftly pulled it onto the land, where the sea creature actively beat its tail. He cast the line again. Then Kimura caught another fish. Then another and another. Naruse thought it was all due to the good bite, since the demon was catching so much prey in such a short time. The boy thought that there were quite a few fish here, so it might be worth trying to use a fence or a long net. He looked very happy, which immediately caught the eye of Commander Kanon. The demon lizard suddenly became very focused, feeling that there was something on the end of the line. Kimura tugged the rod again, and another fish appeared from the water, its scales shimmering in the light. A moment later, following the catch, a huge toothy monster jumped out of the sea. It looked as if it had flown into the sky. Waves immediately spread across the water from this terrible creature. Naruse's eyes widened so much that they almost popped out of their sockets. The boy screamed loudly from the horror he saw. Following the little fish, a simply gigantic creature with large teeth as sharp as razor blades emerged from the water. From this movement, the wave hit the stone ledge on which the heroes were located. Kanon and Naruse looked at the creature in shock. Kimura pulled his fishing rod again, trying to save his catch from the monster. The huge mouth snapped shut a few centimeters away from the fish before it could grab it. Then, the monster fell back into the sea. Splashes of water drenched everything in the area, including Team 15. Drenched by the giant that had suddenly appeared, Naruse asked what it was. Kanon, also completely drenched, calmly replied that it was tuna. The answer shocked the boy even more. The young man asked if this creature was a demon, to which he received an answer from the lizard that the tuna, like boars, cannot use magic, and therefore belongs to the animal species. Kimura continued to say that he lives in all the sea zones belonging to the demon lord. If you move carelessly on a boat in the water, the tuna can swallow it whole, and there are many more such fish. Under the slope where the heroes were, the silhouettes of two tuna were swimming. The demon lizard said that because of these creatures, the nets are torn and the fishing rods are broken. Kanon picked up on his thought and said that the fishing parties are not producing good results because the tuna are interfering with them. Naruse, holding his chin, listened thoughtfully to his teammates. Throwing the fishing rod over his shoulder, Kimura looked at the boy. He said that the boy saw this fish. Then, the lizard asked a question that surprised Naruse a little. The demon asked if the man really thought they had a chance to win. The guy's clothes were dripping with water. He started listing the facts, bending back the fingers on his left hand. Narus admitted that he still had no idea what to do with this huge fish. He also didn't know what the other team leaders were planning to do. There were too many uncertainties right now. But the guy didn't seem upset. A smile lit up his face, and the man confidently said that he would go to the end. He did not want to regret losing later because he gave up halfway and believed that the others would also prefer to make every effort to win. Commander Cannon and Kimura looked at the man approvingly and smiled. The girl suggested that they split up and gather information, since they had little time left. The lizard agreed with her and said that they needed to call the others. They discussed what needed to be done. First, they needed to study the types and quantities of fish they could catch, and also survey the area, and of course, find out about this tuna. While the heroes were discussing their plan of action, a demon in the form of a plush cat was eavesdropping on them from behind the nearby trees. The next day, having collected all the necessary information, the guys discussed further actions. They did not understand what to do, because having walked around all the places and marked them on the map, the team realized that the coastal waters were teeming with dances. Apparently, the places for fishing are the habitat of tuna. Team 15 could, of course, search for a little more space, but the main task was to somehow deal with this giant tuna. Suddenly, from the sea, they heard someone scream and came closer to the edge of the cliff to see what was happening on the water. The leader of the first team, Ivanov, stood at the bow of the boat and encouraged his guys as they rowed forward with all their might. Their small vessel cut through the water like a hot knife melting butter. Narus was surprised that the first team was sailing on such a small boat. He looked at them, and his face showed concern for the demons. Having reached the right place, Ivanov ordered everyone to take fishing rods. The team immediately obeyed the commander, and they all together began to throw bait into the sea in a coordinated manner. In just a few moments, the catch appeared. The team captain praised his guys and greeted the fish that got into their boat. Out of the blue, a giant tuna suddenly appeared from the water. It was going to swallow the small boat. Fishing stopped for a while. The crew was horrified by what they saw, but the captain did not flinch. Ivanov was waiting for this creature and, smiling from ear to ear, was preparing to repel the attack of the huge fish. In an instant, he jumped up and used his magic to create invisible platforms that allowed him to throw the tuna away from their ship. There was a thud as one of the forced platforms hit the fish. The tuna opened its toothy mouth and flew away from Ivanov and the first team. With a loud splash, the fish fell back into the sea. The captain landed deftly back on the bow of their ship. Neruz watched this scene closely and was surprised at how quickly the first team managed to deal with such a big problem. Raising his hand, Ivanov shouted to his team to continue fishing. Cannon explained that the leader of the first squad had an ability that allowed him to release shockwaves from his paws. Slime added that despite their specialization, they usually did not use traps when hunting. Narus looked questioningly at the water and noticed another boat there. Slime immediately recognized one of the demons. It was Marin, the leader of the third team. The sheep girl was sleeping on the ship. She had a cute blindfold on her eyes. The teammates tried in every way to wake up their leader. When the girl with the horns woke up and lowered the bandage around her neck, she sleepily asked where they were. One of the demons answered that they had already gone out to sea. The captain stretched and told the guys to do everything without her, because the girl didn't care about bonuses and other nonsense. She reminded that she had said many times that she had enough food and a place to sleep. One of the demons came up with a way to make it work, and said that if they got this bonus, the leader would be able to buy delicious food and a soft, comfortable futon. Myran immediately paid attention to these words. She loved to eat a lot, and everything soft. Knowing the weakness of their leader, the teammates continued to talk about the soft and fluffy futon. The girl jumped to her feet and, saying that nothing could be done, resolutely stood on the edge of the boat, ready to act. Mayrin, possessing a unique and powerful magical power, actively used her abilities, and as a result, snow-white, soft, and fluffy fur began to gradually appear on her hands, which looked incredibly beautiful and mesmerizing. The demoness was completely focused on this process, immersed in her thoughts and actions, not noticing anything around her. As soon as there was too much cotton wool and it reached a critical mass, this amazing magical matter began to fly off from the sheep in large quantities, while it vigorously shook its hands, as if trying to get rid of the excess and unnecessary. On the surface of the sea around the boat, many clumps of magical wool were formed, floating on the water. These clumps looked like light cumulus clouds, creating an amazing and fascinating sight. Naruse, watching all that was happening with great curiosity, was very interested in what he saw, and could not contain his surprise, exclaiming questioningly as to what this cotton wool was doing in the sea, which had filled the surrounding area in such quantity. Meanwhile, a tuna that was swimming near the third team's boat noticed the hair floating in the water and decided to swim closer to this unusual and intriguing phenomenon. When the fish touched a piece of this cloud, it suddenly froze in place, as if speechless. The next moment, when everyone was absorbed in watching what was happening, a huge tuna carcass appeared next to Myron's ship, floating belly up on the surface of the water. This created even greater surprise and bewilderment among all the characters, who could not believe their eyes and did not understand how this happened. Naruse, even more surprised by what he just saw, couldn't help but let out a cry, wondering what exactly had just happened. Commander Kennen, noticing his confusion and bewilderment, calmly told him that it was actually the result of the Myron leader's magic. She has a unique ability to create a special cotton wool from her body, which has incredible properties. Apparently, all creatures that even slightly touch this magical matter immediately fall into a deep sleep and lose consciousness. The leader herself also went to sleep again after using her ability. From all this, Naruse came to the conclusion that the groups that achieved high results possessed very powerful magic. The guy carefully watched the opponents and analyzed their actions. Slime interrupted his thoughts and said that they also needed to step up their game, or things would get really bad, since the other leaders were already taking down the giant tuna one by one. Canon understood this, but she couldn't think of a solution right now. At that moment, a familiar voice was heard from the forest. A question was asked to the leader of the 15th group. The girl was asked if she was really watching the enemies in such a place, and they also noticed that she was too relaxed. Continuing its thought, the figure walks towards Naruse, Canon, the slime, and Kimura. It said sarcastically that it envied them, since, apparently, the group still had some time to spare. Leader Souffle stood in front of part of Team 15 and looked at them with a sly smile. The guy looked in her direction and seriously asked why the demoness was here and not fishing with her team. The leader of the 14th team approached the heroes. Naruse, having listened to the girl, asked why she was here. All eyes were directed at the leader of Souffle. She raised her hand and tried to convince everyone that there was no need to strain themselves so much, because the demoness just happened to see Kanam-san and decided to call out to her. The guy smiled awkwardly and thanked Captain Souffle for visiting them. The girl with the black tail accepted the thanks and said that she supported them. Slime intervened in the conversation and exclaimed that Souffle had always been hostile to Team 15. There could be no talk of any support. He was amazed at her impudence. Slime looked disapprovingly at the captain of the 14th team, who said that they apparently misunderstood her. Souffle spread her arms out to the side and, with a meaningful smile on her face, said that she really supported Canon because the girl was very interested in the reason for her recent success. However, she was willing to bet that it was because of the hooded demoness's family support. The young man looked at Canon, who was silently listening to Souffle's remarks. The leader of Team 15 did not say a word. The captain of the 14th group turned around and walked closer to the edge of the cliff. At this time, she suggested that the others try their best, so as not to regret the lost opportunities later. The demoness stopped and turned around again to look at the girl and the boy. Then she called out to Kanan-san. With a sneer, the girl said that as soon as someone from the family of the head of the 15th team came here, Souffle asked to be sure to convey her greetings to this demon. Standing with her back to the cliff, she spread and raised her arms. The next moment, the demoness jumped down from the cliff, heading straight into the sea. Norus looked at her in surprise. Gracefully, Sufli landed right on top of her crew's wooden boat. She gave the order to move. The demon in charge of the controls obeyed without question and launched the magic ball that served as the vehicle's engine. The ball immediately began to spin, and the vessel began to move. At great speed, the boat cut through the waves and moved forward. One of the 14th team members, who was watching everything through binoculars, informed everyone that there was a tuna on the horizon. Souffle looked at him, closed one eye, and put her hand with claws forward as if she was trying to squeeze something. Since the fish was far enough away, from the demoness's perspective, it looked like the tuna was jumping right into her hand. The next moment, the girl suddenly clenched her fist, using her strength. Her hand tensed, the muscles tightened, and a noticeable tense sigh was heard in the air. Narus opened his mouth watching the scene, and next to him stood Cannon, also surprised. Souffle jerked her right hand sharply to the left, and at the same moment the giant tuna, which had been hanging in the air until then, suddenly rushed in the same direction. The girl launched the huge fish far into the sky, and despite its gigantic size, it seemed as if it was of normal size, or even smaller. Cannon's eyes widened and Narus's expression showed indescribable horror. The demoness threw the tuna straight towards them, and the fish was approaching Team 15's location at a tremendous speed. The giant carcass crashed into the rock the heroes were standing on with a roar. The powerful impact caused a strong vibration, and the ground shook from the impact. The entire surface beneath Narus's feet shook, and he barely managed to stay on his feet. There was a splash. This time, the boat of the 14th team was attacked by two giant tuna at once. The team called out to the leader, Sufla. The demoness suddenly spread her arms and clenched her fists with force. Both fish froze in the air, as if submitting to her will. The next moment, the girl brought her hands together, causing the huge creatures to hit each other with a huge roar. Nerus was amazed by the strength of the commander of the 14th team. Her determination and strength left a strong impression on him. Sufal lowered her hands, closed her eyes, and exhaled from fatigue. Feeling how the tension gradually left her body, she said that this catch would be enough, and now it was time to drag it to the shore. Her voice was firm and confident. There was a sense of determination in it. The group unanimously agreed with the leader, nodding in agreement. The looks of the participants were full of determination and readiness to complete the task. The demons took up their spears, their eyes blazing with determination. They swung them at the same time and threw them at the dead fish. The metal harpoons pierced the flesh with a dull sound, sticking firmly. The boat began moving again, gliding softly across the calm water. Behind it, tied to ropes, the opposing team's catch moved along. Heavy, it moved slowly through the water, as if subject to the force of the current. Slime, looking at this, shouted that at this rate it would end badly for their group. Kanan exclaimed, turning to Naruz, that they also urgently needed to go to sea. The guy refused, saying that rash actions would not yield any results. The team leader was taken aback and looked down. The girl apologized for losing her temper, but still asked what they should do in this situation. The young man raised his hand to his chin again and thought seriously. He hummed and said thoughtfully that maybe they could do it after all. These words surprised the team and shocked them a little. The whole group felt a change in the atmosphere. Suddenly there was a sense of hope and possibility. Slime asked in surprise if this was true, to which the man replied in the affirmative. He smiled slyly and raised his index finger. Narus looked like a genius detective when he said that an idea had come to him while he was watching the others catching fish. Looking at the boy, the leader of the 15th team, Cannon, and the talking slime asked in unison what kind of idea this was. Their voices sounded at the same time, showing interest and a little confusion. The girl looked at him carefully. Curiosity and expectation of an explanation were visible in her eyes. A lot depended on what he would say. The second day of the competition has arrived. The teams continue to fish. It's getting dark. Asagi-ri is unhappy. Team 15 is sitting around a pile of branches. Asagi-ri doesn't understand what they're doing because they need to catch fish. Kanon explains that they need these materials for an upcoming fishing trip. Dolma brings more vines, and the one-horned demon is indignant that they have not collected everything yet. Kamul wonders if everyone should do this, as he thinks they won't even know how much fish the other teams have caught. Naru says that Lime's double is monitoring the other team's process, and they won't have a problem with that. The man also says that every second is important now, in order to quickly finish the preparations and fight the other groups. After his explanation, Camille understands everything. Nereus thinks that if they knew the habits of tuna, what they like and don't like, they could use a bottom or purse seine. The group members are still unsure if they're doing the right thing. Since the competition is decided by catch size this time, there is a way to win without catching a tuna. Team 13 has already given up on that and is focusing on smaller fish. Because the protagonist group spent the entire day investigating the situation yesterday but still couldn't get important information about the tuna, Asagi-ri doubts whether everything is going according to plan. The man is not sure that they will definitely catch the fish with this. However, if the other teams are catching tuna, they won't be able to catch them using small fish. Naris argues that they should try to catch tuna too. Team 15 has no one with magic capable of defeating this giant fish. They are left wondering if they are doomed to fail. Kanon explains that this is why they are working together. The team leader says that before Narus joined them, everyone hunted boars separately, which is why they were in last place among the hunting groups. When they cooperated with the 13th team by combining magic, they were able to catch many boars. That's why Kanon asks his group for cooperation this time too. Her comrades don't mind. But in this case, Kamul wants their leader to tell them about his magic. Narus is surprised that the other members don't know about it. Kanon is unsure of her ability. If she hides her horn, then she hides her power too. The team doesn't know what their leader is capable of. They can't truly trust someone who doesn't show all their cards. So if she trusts them, she has to tell them about herself. The girl looks depressed. The main character tries to explain her situation. However, the leader calms him down and says that she wanted to tell them everything from the beginning. Narus remembers her words about wanting to change. Kanon explains that her magic is healing, and since her power is defective, she can't heal properly, but she can stop bleeding. Asagi-ri says that the power is quite convenient, but it is not very useful in hunting. Lime is a little disappointed, as he thought that the leader was hiding something serious. The others wonder why she hid it. Kanon takes off her hood. Her comrades are shocked to see her inferiority. The girl explains that in her family, there is a deep connection between horns and magic. And since she grew up with only one horn, it makes her feel inferior to the rest of her family, causing them to turn their backs on her. That's why she always couldn't find the confidence to tell them about it. But now she decided that this can't go on like this, and she has to change. Since Kanon does not possess strong magic like the other team leaders, she bows her head and asks her comrades for help. With trembling hands, she asks if they will help her. Asagi-ri replies reassuringly that if that were the case, the girl could have told them earlier. Kamul agrees. The leader looks up in shock. The black-haired woman tries to apologize because she said a lot of things, because she didn't know her situation. Lime approaches Asagi-ri and tells her to apologize properly. The black-haired demoness asks if she looks like a bad woman. Slime replies that she is not far from the truth. The woman gets angry and stretches Lime, who apologizes. Asagi-ri declares that from now on they are a real team and counts on the leader. Kanon happily agrees and Narus smiles. He is pleased that everything has been resolved safely. Lime wonders what Kildall is doing now, as he has been virtually invisible lately. The leader recalls her conversation with the kitten. The girl asks if he is worried about breaking the cage. She tries to tell him that it is not his fault, since Garwa made him do it. and if he explains it to their comrades, they will understand. However, as he is leaving, Kildal interrupts her and tells her to leave him alone. Kanon doesn't know what to tell the rest of the team. Naruse helps her out by telling her that they've assigned him another job, so they'll see him again soon. The team successfully wove the vines. The rope turned out to be quite large and long. They hope that it will be just as strong and then everything will be fine. The leader announces that the 15th team will start fishing right now. The others agree. Dolma ties the woven vine to a tree, asking if it will do. Naruse confirms. He turns to the leader and says that this time she will have to take full command. The girl is shocked. She states that it would be much better if Narusan took command. However, the man interrupts her, pointing out that this is a competition between the group leaders. After all, what matters is how much the leader can unite the team. They recall the department head saying that before appointing the next deputy, she wants to use this criterion for her final decision. Kanon is still worried. She is not sure she can do it. Naruse reassures her that she can handle it and he is completely confident in it. Recently, when the conversation turned to the leader's magic, the boy wanted to intervene, since it is very difficult to talk about one's weaknesses in front of subordinates. He apologizes because he thought that this was too much for the girl. However, he realized that he was wrong, because she stood firm in front of her subordinates and won their trust. At that moment, he was convinced that the words spoken by the leader were sincere. She should be confident in herself because she can change. Kanon is inspired by his speech and asks him to support her. The group approaches the cliff. Since the preparations are complete, the leader demands to obey her instructions and commands Doma to throw the rope into the water. He throws the vine with all his might and hits the spot where the tuna was yesterday. The white-haired girl praises him. The team grabs the rope. A large fish clings to the vine with its teeth. Kanon shouts at Natsumis to strengthen the vine with his magic. The wooden doll obeys and follows the order. The rope is pulled taut, and its strength is normal, but the crew members have a hard time holding on to the tuna. The liana, tied to the tree, almost rips it out of the ground. When the fish calms down a bit, the leader commands Asakiri to pull it out in one go. The black-haired demoness puts in some effort and, with a scream, pulls out a huge tuna. The fish flies up, and they both fall to the ground with a crash. Team 15 is jubilant. They managed to catch a tuna. Natsume praises Kanon because she did a great job. The girl's hands are shaking from excitement and the work she has done. She clenches her palms into fists. The leader is so happy that tears appear in her eyes. Sufel-san, standing on her boat, is shocked that Kanon was able to catch a tuna. She doesn't believe that it's even possible. The head of the department jumps through the trees, checking how the teams are progressing. She sees a mountain of tuna, saying that it's pretty good, also wondering which team did it. She notices Kildal standing nearby looking at his teammates. Team 15 continues to catch tuna. The leader asks Asagiri to pull the rope, and they successfully catch another fish. Lime is jumping happily around a pile of fish. He says that the guys are great because they caught 4 of them today. Slime can't believe they got so many. The leader agrees with him and thanks him for the work he has done, and notices Asagiri lying motionless on the ground. The black-haired demoness reports that she can no longer move. Her body lacks strength. They conclude that their limit is 4 fish per day. The man states that Asagiri is under a lot of strain. Since the sun is already setting, Naru suggests to the leader to call it a day. He wants the black-haired woman to rest. Kamal asks if everything will be okay. The man confirms, having received information from Lime. He says other groups have caught about 6 tuna in the last 2 days, while their team started fishing a day late but has already caught 4. If they keep up this pace and catch an average of 4 tuna, they will be able to outpace everyone. Kanon realizes that given the time they spent making ropes today, they really should be able to catch that many fish in a day. Naru says that this is only his proposal and only the leader can make the decision. Everyone waits for her words. The girl agrees and says that the work for today is finished and they should have a good rest. Asagiri agrees frantically. The sixth day has arrived. The black-haired demoness continues to furiously pull fish out of the water. The woman lies on the ground and screams that she is tired. Kanon tells her to take a break. The man is happy that they are keeping up a good pace. They are catching 4 tuna a day. From what Naruse had heard from Lime, the other teams were pulling in a maximum of 3 fish a day, and they didn't seem to be going any faster. He doubted it. Maybe they just didn't have the latest information. Perhaps in other teams, the leader does everything himself, expending a huge amount of energy. He hopes that the magic has its limits, thinking that if it continues, they will win. However, the slime wakes him from his thoughts, shouting that he has bad news about Team 14. In that group, the subordinates beg their leader to stop, because she has already caught 7 fish and her arm may not hold up. Sufasan rejects them and says that she is not finished yet. She can't stop because if they don't get first place, what was the point of starting at all? They lift another tuna, and the leader squeezes it with difficulty with his strength. The two-horned demoness stands breathing heavily. The eagle shouts to his comrade to turn the boat so as not to make the leader spend even more energy. However, he refuses. He shouts that there are 2 tunas in front of them, and they are approaching. The eagle curses and says that they will do it themselves. When the huge fish attack the boat, even though Sofel-san is at her limit, she still intercepts them with her power. Her arm hurts, but she continues. The eagle yells that this is too much, but the leader shuts him up, demanding that he be quiet. The demoness screams that she cannot lose. She releases all her remaining power, and the fishes shrink. The leader's arm is damaged, and the girl howls in pain. The tuna dies, the crew is in shock, and Suflasan loses consciousness, managing to say what a rich catch they have. Lime tells Naruse that Team 14 caught 10 fish today, and if this continues, the protagonist group will lose. The man anxiously thinks about what to do next, since Asagiri is already tired and cannot be burdened anymore. Seeing the man's confusion, Kanon says she has an idea. Night of the 6th day. Naruse and Kanon came to the cliff. Kildal appears from behind the trees. The leader thanks him for coming. A few hours earlier, when the girl said she had an idea, she suggested asking Tildal for help. Since his magic is string manipulation, if he tied them around the vine, he would be able to control it. Naruse understood the leader's idea. If they can do this, they can save Asagiri and Dolma's forces. It will be much more effective. He agrees because if they convince Kildal, their chances of winning will increase. Kanon doesn't know how to talk to the kitten. The protagonist suggests that she express her feelings sincerely. The leader accepts his advice and asks Kildal to help him with his strength in this fishing. However, their comrade does not believe that they need his strength, because they have already caught a lot of tuna. Naruse understands that Kildal has seen their work. The girl confirms that, thanks to the guys, they had a good catch. However, it is still not enough. Since tomorrow is the last day and Asagiri and the others are heavily loaded, they won't be able to catch up with Sufla-san's team at this rate. So Kanon insistently asks for Kildal's help. The kitten sadly states that he already told him to leave him alone, that he no longer wants to work with them on the same team. Naris lowers his head, thinking it's over. However, the leader stands confidently. The girl says that until recently, due to her helplessness, they could not achieve good results. They were scattered across different teams, but nevertheless, now everyone is striving for one goal. The leader declares that he wants to win together with all members of the 15th team. She bows her head and asks Kildal to work under her again, because she needs him very much. The doll asks what the girl will do when she becomes deputy head of the department. Although she was not up to the task of being a leader until Naruse came along, the demoness did not understand what it meant to be a leader. However, watching Alan-san put the interests of his subordinates first, and Naruse-san who continued to move forward without giving in to difficulties, she understood everything. The girl wants to become a leader who will stand side by side with her subordinates. Someone who will lead her subordinates forward, showing them the way. That is her goal. The man was surprised by the leader's aspiration. Kildall understood everything. Kanan was delighted and shouted that she would wait for him tomorrow morning in the same place. The girl thanks Naruse, because thanks to his advice, everything worked out. However, the main character denies his involvement and says that this is the result of her persistence, since she decided to take the initiative into her own hands. It was her feelings that touched Kildall, and that was all that was needed. The leader again thanks the man for such words. A kitten wanders through a dense forest. Suddenly, someone starts chasing him. The morning of the last competition arrived. A member of the third team is fighting a giant fish. He shouts that this is not all and they will not lose. The dog calls out to the leader as the tuna is flying towards them. The sheep replies that she understands and will do everything now. The leader of the third group throws his cotton wool everywhere, making the fish fall asleep. He does this for the sake of a luxurious, soft bed. The demoness from Team 14 does not back down. She continues to use her power, squeezing the fish in midair, claiming that first place will be theirs. A member of her team brings her something to drink and suggests that she take a break. Sufil-san is happy and agrees to her subordinate's suggestion. At the same time, Asagiri from Group 15 excitedly tells the leader that the other teams have already started and if they wait any longer, they will lose. The girl anxiously confirms her words, but wants to wait a little longer. Since Kildall never showed up, Naruse suggests that the leader continue fishing as before. Kanan tries to understand why he says this. The man agrees that this way the chances of winning will be low. That's why he says he's going to look for the kitten. After all, if they continue fishing as before, his absence won't affect the outcome. He'll find his friend and bring him back. The girl also wants to go with him, but the man stops her. This is not necessary since she is the leader of the 15th team and must remain in place and command the process. Kanan realizes this and agrees, asking her to find the missing Kildall. Naruse tells her to rely on him. They split up and ran in opposite directions, the protagonist into the forest and the leader to his team. Asagiri wonders where the man went. Kanan explains that she sent him to do something else. The leader commands that, although it is late, they will start fishing. Naruse runs through the forest, wondering where Kildall might be. Since the kitten was watching the fishing nearby, it's possible he's there this time too. The tuna clings to the vine. The protagonist runs in search of the kitten, and the leader commands the fishing. Kildall sits on a tree stump in a clearing. He assumes that his crew has already started fishing. Memories of a certain girl who led him by the hand flash through his mind. This makes him angry, reproaching himself for this and the memories, because he thinks that now she will not be able to repeat the same thing. Last night, Sofle-san came across a wandering kitten. Kildall aggressively asks what she is doing here. The leader of the 14th team replies that she was just walking because she was too worried about the last day of the competition. She wonders what the kitten is doing here, since she hasn't even seen him fishing. Kildall turns away from her, saying that it's none of her business. However, the demoness doesn't leave him alone. She reminds him that he often spent time with Garawa-san and most likely knew about his deception. The puppet cat cannot explain the situation, and Sofle-san, interrupting him, says that everything is clear to her and it does not matter anymore. Since he came here, it means he intends to participate in fishing. The demoness insists that it is better for him not to come, since he knew very well what Garawa was doing and hid it. She believes that this is an act of treason against the demon lord's army. How can one trust someone who betrayed his comrades? Kildall is hurt by these words and remembers shouting about how you can't trust a person's words. The enemy group leader continues to press him. She sneers that Kanan is one thing, but what will the other team members think? They're unlikely to just accept it. The kitten was struck by these words. The demoness, leaving, says that she will not insist, but still advises him to leave the army of the demon lord. Kildall sits on a rock and ponders yesterday's situation. Naruse has finally found him and is glad that the doll cat is nearby. The main character invites him to go together. He claims that the guys are waiting for him. Kildall notices the man Nerys calls Kildall to come with him as his comrades are waiting for him. The doll cat screams that it won't go anywhere with him and runs into the forest. The protagonist runs after him, demanding that he stop. He asks what happened. The guy doesn't understand what happened after their meeting yesterday. Kildall gets angry, wanting the man to shut up. The doll cat's memory of the girl asking if he was okay or if he wanted to eat appears again. Kildall gets angry again, this time because of his memories. The kitten blames the man for everything going to hell after he came here. Before that, he just had to listen to Deputy Chief Garwa and not think about anything else. However, since Narus came, the leader and the boys have changed. It starts to rain. The protagonist catches up with Kildall and grabs him by the paw, asking what happened in the end. The puppet cat breaks free and screams for the human to shut up, as he's had enough of him. He screams that Narus also knows that he was the one who broke the cage to stop the team. After thinking, the protagonist confirms that he heard about it, but reassures him that it was Garwa's order, and most likely he did it not of his own free will. Kildall asks him how he knows. Narus explains that he was watching them when they were fishing last time, and was nearby today as well. If the kitten hated the 15th team, he wouldn't come to watch. After all, he worries about his team in his own way. Kildall roared that even if that was the case, it didn't change the fact that he was the one who broke the cage. And how could anyone trust someone like him? The puppet cat claimed that it was impossible, since he had betrayed everyone. After listening to the poor guy, Narus denies his words, saying that the leader does not think so, and that she is still waiting for him. Kitten claims that it is all because she needs his magic. After all, Kanon is the same as Garo. Kanon is the same as Garua. Kildall cries, saying that if you trust, you will be betrayed, and if you disappoint, you will be abandoned. He's tired of all this. The puppet cat turns away and, leaving, announces that he will not return to the team and is leaving the Demon Lord's army altogether. The protagonist confirms that the kitten should indeed be held responsible for the broken cage. He understands that Kildall is afraid of being betrayed again. However, Narus claims that leaving the Demon Lord's army is not an option. If the kitten truly regrets it, then he needs to help Team 15. It is his responsibility. The man assures that the leader of their team, Kanon, is not like Kildall thinks of her. She will definitely not betray, and the doll cat should understand this better than anyone. The cat doesn't know what to do. He understands everything that was said and thinks that the person didn't need to tell him about it. Kanon appears from the forest. Out of breath from running in the rain, she says that she was finally able to find them. Narus and Kildall are surprised and ask what the leader is doing here. All the teams gathered in front of the department head's tower. She thanks everyone for their efforts because they did a great job despite the unfamiliar work. Since the results are summed up, the headmistress would like to announce them. The demons hold their breath. The fox loudly announced that in this competition between teams, the winner is the 14th team with the leader, Suflal. Kanon stands silently to the side. The demoness from the other team exhaled and smiled, saying that it was expected. The boss congratulated Suflal on becoming the new deputy head of the department. In turn, she thanked her. The fox says that the magic of the leader of the 14th team is truly incredible, and she should continue to work for the benefit of the Demon Lord's army. She relies on the demoness. Suflal replies that she will not let her down. The head of the department turns to the others, suggesting that perhaps not everyone is satisfied with the results of this competition, and therefore she will speak out on this matter. Lizitsa believes that any of the guys could have become the winner, and the result of the competition was unpredictable. This time, the 14th team won. They should continue to put an effort in their work, and in no case blame themselves for the loss. Today they should properly praise their subordinates. That's all the department head wanted to say. Also, to applaud the new deputy head, Kilda recalls yesterday's conversation with sadness. Narus asks what their leader is doing in the forest, since she should be fishing. Kanon agrees, but states that they have decided to stop fishing. The protagonist is shocked and asks the reason. The girl explains that she decided not to burden Doma and Asagiri with such tasks anymore. Since her magic is not able to relieve physical fatigue, she apologizes for making the decision on her own. However, Naruse disagrees and says that she shouldn't do that. The guy says that he actually talked to Kildal too and realized that in his current state, it would be difficult to take him with them. So the best solution would be to wait until he came to his senses. The leader understands the situation. However, doubting her choice, she begins to blame herself. That she has put an end to the hard work that all the guys tried so hard to do. However, Naruse interrupts her and says with a smile that he supports her idea. Kanan listens to him with confusion. The man claims that if she made such a decision thinking about her comrades, then he considers it right. He is also sure that she thought about this decision for a long time, and since if it was made after much thought, no one will blame her, because she is the leader of the 15th team. The girl thanks the guy again. The protagonist assumes that it looks like the end has come. Kilda is surprised that the leader made the decision herself, since she was always shy and constantly looked down. Perhaps this is how the man influenced her. The kitten feels like he is now the only one looking down. After the results are announced, Kanan returns to Naruse and Kildal, apologizing for the wait. They thank her for her help. She suggests that they return. At that moment, the department head calls out to Kanan and Naruse with all his might. The guys are surprised to see the fox and thank her for her work. The team leader asks if she needs anything from them. The boss expressively tells that Kanan was irresistible, and although Souffle won, her team took second place. She did a great job. The girl bashfully thanks. In addition, the fox says that since Naruse came to them, the 15th team's performance has improved, and that he is amazing, even though he is a human. The guy thanks her, too. She also apologizes for not being able to live up to expectations as a boss. But next time, she definitely won't let them down. The guys agree that striving for the best is always good. The head of the department, looking at the doll cat, asks if it is Kildal. The kitten confirms her guess. The fox announces that based on his recent actions, although it is difficult to discuss, she needs to talk to him regarding his punishment. The man and the demoness are shocked, and Kildal prepares for the inevitable. Naruse and Kanan ask again in surprise about the punishment for Kildal. The boss confirms, and the kitten looks at her devastatedly. The team leader asks in shock why he should be punished. The fox asks if she really needs to explain this. The department head reports that Kildal did not help in the competition at all, and before that there was an incident with Garua, where he became a victim of the deputy head's lies, but she is not going to blame the doll cat for this. However, if he does not intend to work for the benefit of their future, then the fox expels him from the Demon Lord's army. Kanan is even more shocked. Kildal resignedly states that it doesn't matter whether they try to stop him or not. The outcome is the same. The kitten, leaving, says goodbye and says that he is quite satisfied with this punishment. However, Kanan stops him. The puppet cat breaks free, screaming for her to let him go, because she also thinks that things will be better without him. And even if he stayed, the leader would no longer be able to trust him. The girl denies. She never thought that way. She trusts him. Kildal doesn't understand why, because it doesn't make sense. Kanan screams that it's because he's her subordinate. And what kind of leader is she if she can't trust her subordinates? The girl says that when she met Narusan, she decided to change, that she no longer wants to be someone who just does nothing. She screams that she won't abandon the kitten. The team leader asks his boss to give him another chance. She claims that Kildal did not work because he did not trust her, and if she had paid more attention to him and tried to understand him, then this would not have happened. Kanan bows down and shouts that he will take responsibility for this incident. Naruse smiles and also bows down, asking the boss to come to his senses because the doll cat is very important for the 15th team. They need his magic. The boy heard that Kildal was the best at hunting boars, and if he had behavioral problems, it could be fixed. The guy also thinks that if the kitten stays with them, they will be able to increase their effectiveness many times over. The boss considers her words, looking at their bowed postures. She replies that she trusts them, and if they insist, she will give him another chance. The defenders raise their heads expectantly. The fox, turning to Kildall, asks what he thinks about this, whether he still wants to work in the army of the Demon Lord. Thinking about the past, the human girl's words, Garwa's actions, and the leader's promise, he agrees to work with his comrades. Kanon and Narus rejoice, and the boss announces that she will not punish Kildall for this action, and that he should try to work harder in the future, since he will not have another chance. The boys happily thank her. The puppet cat ponders why they try so desperately for him, protect him, even bow their heads, begging for mercy for someone like him. It seems to him that this is very stupid. The kitten is sure that Deputy Chief Garwa would definitely not have done something like that. The leader calls out to him and extends his hand, happily offering to work together again. A little confused, Kildall informs him that the girl has indeed changed. She asks him in surprise if he really thinks so. The doll cat, confirming, extends his hand in response. He is sure that she is not who she used to be. They shake hands. However, even if Narus and the demon have forgiven him, Kildall is not sure that the guys from Team 15 will be able to. Kenon claims that everything will be fine. She is sure that the guys will understand. However, the man says that he doubts it, since the kitten still let them down, so it is unlikely that the guys will be able to understand him. The girl wonders what they should do. The protagonist points out that in such cases there is only one solution. The comrades wait for an answer in surprise. A dejected Asagiri says that she is depressed. The group members are confused. Lime asks what is wrong with her, since she has been like this since she came to them. Kamul asks what happened. The black-haired demoness says that on her way here, she overheard Team 14 talking, and it looks like Sufla will be the next deputy. Camille now understands why she's so sad. Asagiri shouts that if their leader became the deputy head of the department, they could get a raise. But if there is no raise, then their efforts were in vain. The guys agree with her idea. Kamul claims that there's nothing to be done about it, and if they continued like this, the demoness would not have been able to stand it. So the leader's decision was correct. Asagiri whispers sheepishly that she already knows this without him saying anything. The black-haired woman is surprised that the leader would do such a thing, since she has always been so timid. Lime suggests that perhaps she was simply scared of Asagiri. Slime gets another stretch mark for her words. Slime agrees that if it were the old leader, she probably wouldn't be able to make such a decision. He suggests that it was the person who influenced her. The boys remembered that their friend had disappeared somewhere. They wondered where he had gone. They thought he had talked about some work. Just in time, Kanon and the others appeared, apologizing for keeping them waiting. The leader, Naruse and Kildall, stop in front of the rest of the team, who shout out the puppet cat's name in shock. Asagiri screams and asks where the hell he was and if he knows how much harm he caused with his absence. Kamul says he heard he was on another mission. However, the kitten denies everything. He dejectedly reports that he was simply avoiding work and lazing around. He also admitted that, on the orders of Deputy Garway, he broke their cage. The demoness screamed again that it was his doing, that he was trying to interfere with their work. She waits for him to say something in his defense. Kildall tried to explain that he was simply following orders. However, he was interrupted by the leader, who said that what Asagiri and the others said was the pure truth. His actions amount to betrayal of the 15th team, and he has caused considerable damage to the Demon Lord's army. Kanon sternly points out that this fact cannot be disputed, and hopes that he understands the gravity of his actions. The team members are shocked by the leader's speech. Kildall bows, saying he is truly sorry. Asagiri tries to stop him piteously. Camille interrupts her. He tells her to be quiet for a moment. The kitten, bowing to the ground, asks for forgiveness for what he has done. He understands at this time, due to his thoughtless actions, he has caused them a lot of inconvenience. He asks them to forgive him with all his heart. The puppet cat assures that this will not happen again in the future. He will change and work hard. Therefore, he asks once again to let him work in the 15th team. The boys stand thoughtfully. The leader declares that she also wants to tell them something. She claims that this time Kildall's actions were caused by her unreliable control, and she will also make every effort to ensure that this does not happen again. The leader, standing next to the kitten, also bows down, asking him to forgive. Asagiri exhales and says that this time they will forgive him, so he should raise his head. Since there are no objections, everyone agrees to this decision. Kamol says that although he has no idea why the cat left his job, he is glad that he has returned. Teen 15 happily welcomes him back, and a happy Kildall says he's back. Canon thanks Naruse again for his advice. The protagonist is glad that he was able to be useful. Earlier, he suggested that Kildall should sincerely apologize, and most importantly, that the team leader should condemn the culprit in front of everyone, because if she forgives him right away, the team's discontent will not disappear. After all, the team leader must always remain neutral, and in this case, everything will work out. The girl is glad that Narus is with them. They both look forward to further collaboration. In the department head's tower, the fox, sipping a drink, looks at a mountain of papers. After everything that happened, there was quite a bit of work to do there. She takes a piece of paper and says that if she does one thing after another, then someday she will sort out this red tape. The boss, reading the document, understands that although she, of course, feels sorry for Kanon, she will have to ask for help from a person from her team.